Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemer's Bible with the usual assemblage. I didn't even take a moment when we were gathering backstage to say hello to everybody. I mean, everybody just like immediately jumps into their own backstage banter. So, good morning, everybody.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Morning.
Yeah.
Does
Hey, Aaron.
anybody
How's it
hear
going?
Aaron?
I don't know. I don't have hair long enough, apparently, to be Aaron.
Oh no, I had a haircut yesterday, so definitely not me.
Stop doing
Aaron
Lawrence,
is
though.
like Samson. His awesome is in his hair.
I thought my awesome was in my pants, but all right.
Only Lalandra can vouch.
My
for
hair
that.
my hair is up to my neck at this point.
Wow, it's almost long.
Almost.
All right, enough about that. All right, so we are doing Exodus 6, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And do we have any opening comments on it? Would you want to dive in, or does anybody have announcements?
I have an opening comment.
What's that?
So my opening comment is that even though this is chapter 6, verse 1, since the chapter verse system was made up by Christians much later on, and I don't know exactly what system they use to decide where a chapter begins and where it ends, it doesn't exactly match the sort of the way that the Bible, the Torah scroll is written.
It doesn't
according
match
to
the
the
flow
Jews,
of the
it's
story at all.
Like if you,
Jews divide the Torah in what is called parashot,
yeah,
and verse 1 here is the end of the parasha that we've read, which is called Shemot, which is the name of the book, and verse 2 will begin with the parasha called Va'era.
yeah.
I-
Yeah, so if you look at the text, sorry, what?
Oh, sorry. No, I was just agreeing with you. I can see
Yeah.
even there's a break naturally in my text, right, including the last few verses from last week. And I had a youth pastor who you would have liked. She used to say, I swear sometimes with these chapter divisions, it's like they were riding them on the back of the donkey and they got jolting. It's like, oh, okay, I guess it's there now.
Yes, yeah.
What
this
are you
is
doing?
this is primarily a difference you'll see between the Masoretic text and then other manuscripts. So,
Yeah, it probably
Yes.
was. So the Jewish tradition comes from the Masoretic text, which
Yeah.
they believe is older than the other ones.
yeah, it's always hard to say, right? Because the
Yeah.
oldest Masoretic manuscripts are medieval. So even though it is in the same language, you still get the issue of transmission errors. And like the Septuagint, for example, is a translation, and it is far older. So at least the extant one, right?
Yeah,
So
the actual copy
yeah.
that we have. Yeah.
So it's always fun comparing the two because someone fucked up somewhere is the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
the
it's always fun
Septuagint
to
adds,
figure
out.
adds
Fucked up.
stuff that is not in the
Yeah.
Masoretic text, as I
It
pointed
does.
out previously.
Yeah, it does.
There is a
Need
Jewish
I
tradition.
point out?
Yeah.
Need I point out how none of this could be the case if the thing was God breathed?
Unless God
Well, the
is
argument-
an asshole and is fucking with us.
The argument would be that
Mhm.
like the original was God breathed, whatever that might be, but then human corruption. That would of course be the argument, but essentially, listen, all the evidence that we have
Yeah.
points
Yes, that's the thing.
points to the
I
direction.
when I deconverted and my pastor tried to talk. Oh, sorry. When I
Oh, you
deconverted and my
okay?
pastor tried, I'm fine. My pastor
I think
tried
the
to
camera
talk me
fell.
out of it. I pointed out problems with the Bible as one of the things that we discussed, and he said, you don't have to believe it's inerrant in its current form, only in its original form that we don't have. So I just hear this and I'm scripting in my head. So I am obligated to believe X. X is false. I am therefore obligated to believe hypothetical X so
That
that I
you don't
can
know.
never verify or check against anything. So as long as I believe that thing that might hypothetically have existed somewhere, then I'm good.
And,
Yeah,
and you're
if you think
welcome to
about
make
how
up
many,
whatever you want
thing-
it to be.
And also how many commandments were there actually too? We're getting pretty close to that point here. Were there just 10? No, of course not.
613, I believe.
Exactly. Which is just like, okay, so which ones were right? Which ones were not right? Which ones were considered allegory? Which ones were not? It's just ridiculous. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that
Yeah.
section, by the way. It should be fun.
The Jewish tradition about the difference between the Masoretic text and the Septuagint is that the Septuagint, the name of it means like 70 something.
Yes,
So the tradition is that Jewish tradition is that the Jews of
I think you've
Alexandria
spoken
were
about this
commanded.
before.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they were
think you
commanded
did.
to translate it, and they had 70 scholars translate them individually in their own rooms, so they couldn't communicate with each other, and they all miraculously came up with the same translation with the same errors on purpose.
Yeah,
Oh,
my
no.
ass. So a lot of
Like they were divinely inspired to
Oh.
change certain things so as
Oh.
not to.
a lot of recent scholarship has been
Yeah.
done that's showing that the compilation of the Septuagint is not all that dissimilar to the compilation of the Bible itself in Hebrew. So, for example, there are
Wow.
portions that, right? Yeah, big shocker. There were portions that were written, by different people during different times, and they would translate certain things differently, and then eventually you come to a compilation. But it's not like book by book necessarily. Sometimes it's passage by passage.
Yeah.
So, for example, I do cover I don't know if I actually cover this in my Suffering Servant video, but I remember that I did read over that in my Suffering Servant video, like in the research for it.
I believe it. You know what it makes me think of? I don't know. I think I used this analogy before. It's like you think about like handmade patchwork quilts back in the day, and then having them wear out over generations and cutting the feasible parts out of them and putting them into a new patchwork quilt, and then cutting the feasible parts out of that and putting it into a new patchwork quilt. And 6 lines down there, you're like, which one of these was part of the original patchwork quilt?
Yes,
Fuck
yes.
if I know.
The very famous patchwork of Theseus analogy. Yes.
Yes. Of course they got- yes, exactly.
There's a
exactly. Vote of
Japanese
Theseus.
temple that is like it's the same temple, but all of the wood has
Mhm.
been changed.
Well,
But
it
it's
has
the same
to
It's the
be.
same temple.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
And-
Question of the Ages.
And it does make
but,
sense.
But with the patchwork, like you have original pieces still there, but they're stitched together with other pieces, which are not original, but older than the piece beside them, which are not original, but are older than the piece beside them. And then, it's all just stitch, 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 stitch. And I'm like, where does this even?
Right. Right. So just to wrap up, so last week we finished chapter 5, and according to the chapter division, we finished with Moses says to God, why have you mistreated my people? Why have you sent me? Blah 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 blah, and then it ends.
I vote we
And
read
then now
verse 22 into 5 just to get the flow of the story working again.
Right. So in the original, like, not original, whatever, according to the Jewish chapter division, verse 1 is part of that. So it's like Moses complains, and then God says, verse 1. So yeah, let's start from.
All right,
we
who
start
has a
from verse-
velociraptor?
Yeah,
and
that's Oren.
this chapter also has it goes over the names again.
Yeah, not a
Um,
genealogy.
So if you want, I can read that part. I don't have to read the whole chapter, so we can.
I'll give you
divide
that.
the chapter. Yeah.
God talks here
I'll give
too,
it that
so
part.
God talks here too, so maybe Arn could be God.
He
I'm
does have
tired
to
of
be.
being
start
God.
I thought Aaron will be Aaron, but
It oh,
Now that would have been
He became-
funny.
Yeah, I'm tired
was
of
the
being Aaron
gravitas.
even more.
Yeah, so I don't mind reading from, let's say, verse 13, and then we can mix it up from 5:22 until then.
So
Whatever.
6:13, you said?
Yeah, 6:13.
Sure.
All right.
Just kidding.
Well,
You can't see.
like who
No.
wants to do the narrator? I'll do
you know
it.
what? Yeah.
Oh wait, no.
Oh, no.
you're-
Go ahead.
okay.
I read a lot last week, so I think it's someone else's turn this time. I can
I
do
want
it too.
Lalandra to be God.
Yeah, I'll be the narrator. Lalandra can be God because
That
God
was
is a woman.
very wise of you, Aaron. I just want to say that right now.
Okay.
Who's Moses?
Well, I have to because today is my wife's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday,
Oh,
Luanda.
happy
Happy
birthday.
Happy birthday, Lalandra.
Happy birthday,
Happy birthday.
Lalandra.
I get to be God on my birthday.
So who wants to be the complaining Moses?
Oh,
You know what? I'm pretty good at complaining. Let's go. Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, do it,
Okay,
Lawrence.
so-
Do it.
All right.
Okay.
Starting at verse
5.
22, because flow is important to us, even if not to whoever the hell edited this. Moses returned to the Lord and said,
Wait, that's me, right? I'm the narrator.
No,
No,
I'm the
you're God.
narrator. You're
Oh, no.
God.
Oh, I got confused there. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Okay,
You were the narrator
here it is.
last time.
All right, I'm just like God. Okay. Now shalt thou see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with the strong hand shall he let them go, and with the strong hand shall he drive them out of his land.
Are
I
we
think
all
we-
reading the
we
same
skipped-
version?
Oh,
We
I,
are
you know
reading
what?
Probably not.
say,
That's
I
the
don't-
thing that.
I need to do NIV because it has the quotes, right?
Yeah,
Right,
it's
yeah. Also,
522.
it was actually Lawrence's turn because it was
Is it
Moses
522?
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
it's
So-
five-
sorry,
Yeah,
this
it's
is-
Moses.
So Lawrence
522.
first.
That's right. That's right. Right.
Yeah,
because
because
it's-
That's a
Moses has
great
the line
start.
before God can
There we
say
Great
it.
are.
start.
great start, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Wait, hold on,
Let's
I
try
thought
that
I was-
again.
All right.
Moses
was-
returned to the Lord and said,
Oh, right. This is 522. Okay. Yeah. That's right. Okay. So yeah, all reading
That's
this.
exactly what
That's
he said.
definitely what Moses said.
Yes.
Yeah. This
Moses
is why-
just fumbling
this
with his papers.
This is
while,
why-
like,
This is why last
yeah.
week I was like, did we finish it?
I
So-
was
No.
Yeah.
confused because my version says the Lord
Oh,
said
Nick
unto
the
Moses.
lawyer.
So I
Yeah,
thought,
that's
Lord,
verse
Lord,
1 of
Lord,
chapter
why
6.
art thou sending evil to
That's-
evil?
We're
Yeah.
starting from verse 22
we're
of
starting the
chapter
verse ahead
5.
of 6.
One more
Oh.
time.
All right,
okay.
Moses.
Okay.
Someone get Moses his lines.
Yes, that is me. Here are my lines.
And
I am.
My lord, why have you done harm to this people? Why have you sent me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done harm to this people, and you surely have not rescued your people.
And the Lord said to Moses,
Now shalt thou see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand shall he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of his land.
God also said to Moses,
I am the Lord.
Hmm.
And I
Oh
have
shit.
Okay,
Okay, so that was the natural break in the story.
there you go.
And then the
I
next
noticed
bit,
it.
it's supposed to be the beginning of a new bit, but it's interesting that your translation says, and he also said.
Yeah, it's clearly a tie-in.
Yeah, continued dialogue, it says.
Yeah,
here.
they're trying their best.
And then he
Well,
said, and
their
then he
best.
said,
And then he also said,
said. Yeah.
God also said to Moses,
And I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, but my name of God Almighty, but by my name Jehovah, or Yahovah?
Yeah, Yova, whatever.
Yeah.
Jehovah
Yahoo.
was I not
Moses.
known to them? And I have also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, wherein they were strangers. And I have also heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians kept in bondage. And I have remembered my covenant. Wherefore say unto the children of Israel, I am the Lord. See, you have to have an echo there. And I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will rid you out of their bondage, and I will redeem you with a stretched out arm with great judgments. And I will take you to me for a people, and I will be to you a God. And ye shall know that I am the Lord your God, a terrible God that you'll bow down and worship. I'm just kidding. Which bringeth you out from under the burdens of Egyptians, and I will bring you onto the land concerning which I did swear to give it to you, Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, and I will give it to you for a heritage. I am the Lord, because it's all caps. You gotta say Lord or something like
When I
It is
lay
okay.
my vengeance upon you.
that.
Yeah, we're not to that part yet, but I can't wait for it.
I know.
Yeah.
We need, if we can get Samuel L. Jackson for that, I'm just saying.
we can pull it up.
Moses.
I like this bit.
Moses
have
reported
Sam
this.
Jackson read it for us.
Moses reported this to the Israelites, but they did not listen to him. because of their discouragement and cruel bondage. Then the Lord said unto Moses,
Go in, speak unto Pharaoh, king of Egypt, that he let the children of Israel go out of his land.
but Moses said to the Lord,
Look, actually, I'm going to do a different voice here. Look,
Behold.
the Israelites did not heed me, and how will Pharaoh
Oh my
be?
god.
And I am uncircumcised of lips.
That doesn't make
Hmm.
Hmm. Okay.
And the
Mary, do you
Lord.
have-
Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna start from the next verse.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Um,
Tamara, do you have any commentary?
Yes, I have. First on verse 3, by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself fully known to them. First of all, he says here El Shaddai. In the I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not make myself known to them by the name the Lord. The problem here is that in previous verses, like Genesis 15:7 and 28:13, he does reveal to the patriarchs by his name, which is Jehovah.
Yeah.
So Rashi
Yeah.
comments. So Rashi comments that God doesn't tell them, I did not inform them, but I did not become known, meaning that the name Yehovah indicates God's attribute of keeping faith, quote unquote, but that the promises to the patriarchs were not fulfilled in their lifetime. The meaning of his name was not tangible to them. Nachmanides comments that God appeared to the patriarchs in the form of El Shaddai, in which God performs hidden miracles that appear to the observer as part of the natural order, but he did not appear to them in the form of Yehovah, with which God performs open miracles that subvert the natural order. Gersonides writes that God did not mean to say that he appeared to the patriarchs, but to the people of Israel.
What does
Yeah,
El
got
Shaddai
that
mean
wrong.
again?
I did not
It's-
become known to them.
Yeah, so El Shaddai.
Yeah.
There
Will the
are
real El Shaddai please stand up?
there are quite a few ideas about what it would have originally meant, but it's very clear that it's a takeover from Canaanite, because of course the name El.
Canaanite
would
God
be-
El.
Yeah, the high god.
Yeah, I said
And-
previously that the name probably derives from Shadu, the Akkadian Shadu.
That
And-
is one option. Yeah.
yeah.
So the designation of El Shaddai, which is in fact used a total of 5 times in the patriarchal tales, is an archaic Canaanite composition of divine names. So yeah, I noted El, the high god, which later would just mean God. So it would take away like the character El, but retain the godliness of it. So it would just become a generic term for God. So no satisfactory explanation for the meaning or origin of the name Shaddai has been made, but some scholars link it with a term for mountain, and others associate it with fertility. The
I
usage.
think I've said about this
I think
previously.
it's for God's provision.
There's a bunch of ideas about this, but like no one's really nailed
I
it.
think, yeah, I've also said about the fertility. I remember I said about this where the Shaddai comes from the word shad, which means breast.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah.
The
So
God
I
of
think
the
it
titties.
symbolizes provision.
It's a
Well-
good thing. It's a good thing Lalandra's El Shaddai today. I would just like to point
God
out.
is gender fluid.
Yeah, well.
So, so Jesus is God
old
of titties
ladies.
and wine.
He is nowhere near as cool as Tyrion Lannister. I don't care. But I just want to point out, like, in a simplified version for the non-scholars who may be joining us on this wonderful podcast, this is another case where you can plainly see, and I've brought up the documentary hypothesis, this is thought to have been a priestly source, which means someone writing at the time they came out of Babylon. This is where you can clearly see they are stitching together 2 stories, that people were familiar with the tales of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob associated with the god El, and they're trying to tie that God in with the God Yahweh, who was a different God. But they're doing this retcon. Well, you see, we're actually the same, but I didn't tell them at the time because reasons, but now I'm telling you that this is my true name because I something special prophecy, chosen one, something. So this is somewhere you can very plainly see the stitches of the yes, they were the same, totally. That it's all one, and yeah, Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah,
It would make sense if they were coming out of Babylon because El was a Mesopotamian god, right?
that was Canaanite.
El
Canaanite,
was
yeah.
Canaanite.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
there would have been worshippers in Judah and Israel of both El and Yahweh distinctly at one point in their history.
Yeah, I
and-
remember that there was a regional Yahwehs. There was the Yahweh Teman and Yahweh Shomron, I believe.
So those, as far as historical sources go, those are pretty old references. So they show localized forms
Mhm.
of the deity. So there's also in the tablets of what is it? It's a Kuntalet Adrud, and
Kuntilat Ajod, yes.
yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I know
So
what you're talking about.
they show like Yahweh and his Asherah, and
Mhm.
the so the way I would look at this is not too dissimilar, right? So obviously this is referencing the fact that like I didn't make my name known to them when they obviously kind of did. So this does show stitching, but I think this is more likely to show a period where El Shaddai or El being used generically as God, and then
Mhm.
Shaddai being like a title of that god or like a property, right? Like for example, you have the title El Olam, which pops up, and it's usually translated as God everlasting, right? Which at a later period in time, when there were no longer people, they were already monotheistic, they wouldn't have had the conception of that being a different deity. So they would not have needed to have like a separate tradition about the Canaanite high god El. Instead, what you would have had was you would have this tradition about not even necessarily different divine names, but you would have this one tradition where he does reveal the name and then one where he doesn't. But they would still refer to the same god at the later point in time because the term El had become genericized.
Arabic does this too. Maybe people have heard the term Al Akbar.
Yeah.
Al Akbar,
Yeah.
which
Maybe
means
people
God the
have heard
Great,
that. Yeah.
Maybe.
Allahu Akbar, yeah.
the Great or the Mighty. You know?
Yeah,
So-
so
And
I
yet-
gotta read a couple of comments.
So-
There was
Yeah,
just
I'm
one-
looking forward to those.
There's one that jumped out at me. Tesla Ranger said, and God said, "Where are we? I lost my place."
And Moses said, "Line."
I can see Charleston Heston doing that now. What's my line up here?
Then John 73 John says, if it's God breathed and God is an asshole, does that mean it's a fart?
Well, maybe Family Guy was right about the origin of the universe. God just let it fart.
I'm
Then
curious what
John
you guys think
Wilde?
about the origin. Oh, you're still doing your thing. Sorry. Oh, wait.
John Wilde says, Exodus, the one part of the Bible that any Christian should have memorized due to the commandments, and none of them have.
Well, technically, there is also the Deuteronomy version of the commandments, so they could have memorized the Deuteronomic version.
That's true.
Yeah, but then they don't match.
Well,
Exactly.
Leviticus and Deuteronomy don't match, but, well, they sometimes match.
Inconsistencies? No, I don't believe that.
Then
There-
Nate the lawyer, hey Nate, says offers $10 and says, RN Raw Live question. As non-believers, you are in the small minority like flat earthers. Since 90% of the population believes in God and you guys claim God does not exist or just non-belief. Well, I don't
Okay.
claim that, I mean, okay.
Is there
I'm having trouble
a
understanding
question
the
there?
question.
There's
Yeah.
so many more people who just do not
So,
adhere to
the-
I
English
mean,
and
it's an
don't say it out
argument
loud.
ad popularum.
Oh,
The
do you guys-
question already
absolutely
admits that
right.
we are non-believers, right? So the broad category is non-believers. There are people who say, hey, there's a magic invisible man who controls everything we do, but we have free will because that's not a contradiction. And the non-believer says, I don't believe you.
Also,
Now, there may be a
religion is
subset
cultural
of people who
construct.
a
So-
subset of the people who say they don't believe you also say, I believe you're wrong. But the ones who say I believe you're wrong are not the dominant. I mean, they don't, or they might actually be in the majority in some cases, but they are not the entire set. They are a subset of the people who don't believe.
Well, and 90% is wrong on every metric. Religion is a cultural thing as well as a belief thing. There are many people who are culturally associated with one religion or another, be it Islam, Hinduism, or Catholicism, who do not believe in God. There are Catholic atheists in Ireland, for example, because there's a huge history and culture and all that associated. It doesn't mean they believe, especially in the case of Catholics, because in order to get your name off the rolls of the church, while they were used to be willing to excommunicate you for damn near everything, you have to basically threaten to go perform profane acts with the host if they don't take you off their register. So their numbers are just anyone who ever got baptized, even if it was just because you had one superstitious great grandma who was going to die and she just wanted to see your baby baptized. So you thought it's just water, who cares? And then that person is counted as a Catholic for the rest of their life. So the numbers are not even close to what you think they are. And it wouldn't matter because facts and reality speak for themselves and you can test them.
Yeah, and doesn't the Catholic Church already have all the money?
Well,
Just down here.
Yeah, they
thought the
they
Mormons
invested
had.
in a lot of art. Yeah, the Mormons
Yeah,
are
Mormons have a lot of money,
making
but
track.
the Vatican has a vast cache of a lot of artifacts that, in fact, many parts of the world are trying to have them open up their doors because they're holding on to a lot of wonderful relics of our history that no one's allowed to see, or very few. And it's a real problem, in fact. So yeah, they're wealthy, but we have no idea how much because, well, they're a kingdom of their own.
Yeah.
So then the next comment is Rachel Guderjan offers $2, says, "Happy birthday, Lalandra."
Oh, thank you.
And then Kicker White Lion offers 20 Czech kroner, says, "Happy birthday, Lalandra."
Yay.
Nate the Lawyer, $5, happy birthday, another trip around the sun.
Yep.
And Ivory Darkness said, "Who would be a better god, Samuel L. Jackson or Morgan Freeman?"
Morgan Freeman.
Well, Morgan Freeman at least has experience being God. Samuel L.
Sam's
Jackson
the
always...
devil. Oh my God.
No,
Samuel L. Jackson.
I would go to
Old
hell for
Testament
that
God.
purpose.
More
Old
like
Testament
Samael L.
mighty
Jackson.
God.
Oh, oh,
Samuel Jackson.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love
Yes.
that.
Samuel Jackson.
We have a snake
I don't know
named
about-
Samael. I've just changed his last name.
Yeah, and
I
I've
don't know
spoken
about you
just
guys,
about
whatever
Samael
I hear-
previously.
Whenever I hear the god L, I can't help but think of Rimmer from Red Dwarf having like a big old, age, but instead having
Go
an L on it.
Dad.
I'd vote for
your
Samuel L.
Lord.
Jackson. I'd vote for Samuel L. Jackson because he would have said to King James, "English, motherfucker, do you speak it?" Sorry.
I think it depends
That's a
which
good
God
poll.
you're
That would be
going
a
with.
very good poll. I love that.
The good version God, you want your Morgan Freeman, and the I will lay my vengeance upon you, you want your Samuel L. Jackson. So
Okay. Now I have a comment on verse 9. About the hard. Yeah. Verse 9 in general. So Nachmanides comments, "It was not because they did not believe in God and in his prophet that they hearkened not. Rather, they paid no attention to his words because of impatience of spirit, as a person whose soul is grieved on account of his misery and who does not want to live another moment in his suffering, even though he knows that he will be relieved later. The discouragement was their fear that Pharaoh would put them to death, as their officers said to Moses, and the harsh labor was the pressure for which the taskmasters pressed upon them and hurried them in their daily task, which gave them no chance to hear anything and consider it."
It's also interesting the actual translation used here for the first reason, which is literally a shortness of breath.
Yes.
But it's translated as, I mean, in your commentary you said something about the spirit, like
impatience of spirit.
Patience of spirit, shortness of breath, and then Lilith read from which version did you read from, Lilith?
NIV.
NIV, and which said, it also said impatience, right?
Yeah, the NIV said
verse 9.
Verse 9. Yeah, because of their discouragement and cruel bondage.
Discouragement.
Yeah, discouragement. It's certainly plausible in the context of the story. They're slaves being
I'm saying the literal
Um,
translation, the literal word is literally shortness of breath. Or,
Yeah,
I guess
the JPS
breath,
translates
spirit.
the JPS translates their spirits crushed.
Oh, that's so nice.
Poetic.
That could make sense. Discouragement kind of sounds more like
Yeah, because I think it'd be the
crushed
same
spirit.
word, right? Ruach, it's the same word
Ruach.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and breath and
Spirit
spirit,
and-
as
Yeah.
Aaron
Yeah.
always points out, are equivalent in the Bible a lot of the time. So
Yes.
Yeah, so it's interesting actually, because over here, ruach, I mean, is normally translated as wind or spirit.
Yes.
And the word for breath is normally neshama, which also means soul.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ghost in
shortness of
Hebrew is
breath
Wach Lefaim.
Oh.
So,
Yeah.
verse 12, I speak with flattering lips. The KJV reads, who am of uncircumcised lips. In the Hebrew Bible, it's aral sfatayim. According to Rashi, all words that derive from the root ein resh lamed are meant to signify obstruction or closeness. The same root appears conjoined with other body parts in the Bible, for example, the heart in Jeremiah 9:25 and ears in Jeremiah 6:10. The Septuagint translates, I am without eloquence, and Saadia Gaon translates, I can't say the words in their correct pronunciations.
That's
Why did
interesting.
they
So-
choose
too.
uncircumcised lips in the KJV?
I have a feeling
Because
that
It is the
probably
same
is
word.
Well,
something
the same-
about well. Oh,
It's just
Um,
more.
wanna say it?
It's
yeah,
more
I
of a
s-
literal
the name-
translation.
The name that is used is aral.
Okay.
What the fuck was
Mm.
that? Sorry, I heard a noise.
Just try to
now the-
imagine how difficult it would be to pronounce anything if you circumcised your lips.
Yeah,
I
so
have a
it's
pocket knife
interesting.
somewhere.
Oh,
So-
I do have a note
Wait,
on this.
I didn't.
I have a
finish,
note on
Go
this
ahead,
too.
go ahead,
chapter
go
as
ahead.
well. So aral is uncircumcised because the word for foreskin is ola, and ein resh lamed is the word is used for uncircumcised stuff.
Yeah,
Mm.
I
it's
have a
interesting
feeling
that-
that it could. I think it could be
Yeah.
something around the lines of that. The concept of an uncircumcised person would not be held in the same high of opinion or something like that. So it could be an allegory.
Right.
Not,
So
maybe not actually
I think the
that. But it could be,
allegory- Yeah.
it's a phrase
see what I'm
used
trying
in
to say
one
there?
of the tales of the later prophets. I'm a man of uncircumcised heart.
close, very
Yeah.
close. Yeah. So
Circumcised
the,
yeah,
tongue
I
and-
think Rashi is saying that the word is used in the Bible in the sense of both uncircumcised, but also in a sense of like sealing and being stopped up. So
Was Moses
uh,
uncircumcised because according
No,
to
he
the
was born
legend, he
circumcised.
wasn't raised by Hebrews?
he was born circumcised according to the legend. Well, not the
yeah,
legend,
don't think
itself,
it's one of
but
those later biblical
but
legends.
the tradition. No, it's not that he's
The fairy
uncircumcised.
tale.
It's that his lips are uncircumcised, which is could be read as a euphemism for my
They're-
lips are
they're-
sealed.
It would be an idiom, is the thing.
Well,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it would mean they're loose,
Yeah, it would be
right?
that.
Like the
No,
skin.
sealed. As
No.
in he has trouble speaking.
Sealed.
So
Yeah,
Um,
he's brought that up before, that he has difficulty with public speaking, as many people do. Some people have claimed he was a stutterer, and it either way it could just be
Stutter.
him sort of groveling and kowtowing and lowly me in front of
So you
God.
could
Funny,
interpret
Charlton
as-
Heston didn't strike me as the mealy mouth stuttering, speech impediment sort of a person. I mean, why did they get Heston? Why didn't they get the what is his name, Woody? There are so many other actors you could have gotten that would have been able to play that kind of a part
God.
better. And
Yeah, that's
Isaac, I
American
think it was.
Moses.
I
I
automatically
Isaac
jumped to
just said-
Woody Allen when you said that. It's like, oh my god, what a great line that would have been for him. Sorry. Go ahead. It just
Yeah.
came in my head.
Yeah, and so I think it was Isaac that said that the word might not have meant circumcised; it might have meant stopped up, and so instead of circumcised lips, he had constipated lips.
I think I said it.
It's the
The
same
same word
words.
appears as
Trying to
obstruction
barf.
of closeness.
Yeah. Yeah, Rashi
Yeah,
says that it's
that's how I
used in that
interpret it as
sense.
well. It seems that way.
Yeah, so
Definitely
the
not
expression
meant to
like
be a literal.
yeah. I mean, I
I-
guess people might learn from it like the idea of like being uncircumcised is like closed off to God or something.
Yeah,
and
but-
then by
but I-
circumcising you're opening yourself up or something like that.
Yeah, but I've
That's
also
how I
mentioned
read
the translations that they read it differently, the Septuagint
Yeah.
and Saadia Gaon. So
Yeah, for sure.
So
Now,
the different. So other
Lawrence-
translations had a different interpretation of that. Is what you're trying to say?
yes,
You could
But
translate
God
it
is not the
literally.
author of confusion, and there
Or you
is
can
no
translate it-
contradiction.
the translators usually do this. They
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like as I pointed out before, no such thing as a perfect translation. So sometimes
Yeah.
they're going to translate the meaning behind this, and other times they're going to be like, here's the literal translation of this phrase. And now this especially doesn't work for idioms, because like if I like if I were to translate literally from like the English, idiom, I got your back, to Russian, it would be like, I have your spine. So it would not work.
That seems very appropriate in Russian. I'm just saying. I have your spine, comrade.
Is anyone
I
else getting
possess
Alien
our
versus
spine.
Predator flashbacks and just?
Yeah, like
It sounds like the opposite of being.
I mean, I am in the
Idiom
forest
doesn't
right now,
work.
so I'm getting a lot of those vibes. If you get my meaning behind.
Yeah, so this
Now, the
this
little
is-
thing in the corner there—that's actually the Predator. Just so you know.
Do not worry, I possess your spine.
Wow.
See, yeah, shit like that. You're not gonna. It's not gonna work.
Oh, it's so funny.
So,
Yeah, you can choose to write in your English translation, I am of uncircumcised lips, or you can choose to write, I have sealed lips.
yeah,
If you want to be,
Yeah.
less literal.
Yes.
That's what it seems like to me, anyway.
Okay, I got a couple more comments, and then we'll continue reading. Matt White says, Tomer, is ruach, wind, related to rook, a giant eagle?
I don't understand the rook part. There is no word in Hebrew rook that.
No, there is in
It-
Greek mythology the roc, which is a giant eagle. There is also a Jewish tradition of there being a giant bird, but it's not called a roc. I can't remember what it's called. Ziz, I think it's called. So
I don't-
Rodan.
I don't-
no connection to.
I
I'm
don't
getting
know.
a lot
And
of
also
Final
ruach
Fantasy
is
vibes right now, guys.
also
Just so you know,
ruach is
if any of you guys are gamers.
ruach is not ruach. It's ruach.
Ruach.
It's more of a guttural sound and
fun.
more similar to A than it is similar to K. Yeah, so the rock has got nothing to do with it. Yeah.
And then Night in Space says, how many generations passed between Noah and the Pharaoh?
Oh no, I don't know.
Not again.
generations between Noah and the Pharaoh. Man, listen.
Noah and the
like,
Pharaoh.
I don't think we were like counting. There
Between
was,
Noah and
was-
Abraham is 10 generations, I think.
yeah,
Then
there
you've
was.
got the 3 patriarchs of 13, 14, 15. I guess Moses is 16th generation, I think. Does that make sense?
So is that about what?
It
3 generations from Israel.
makes sense, but like
Israel, Levi. We'll get to it the next. I'm
We'll
gonna
get
read
to
it
this
now.
maybe in Chronicles.
I'm gonna read it now. We're
Not
gonna see
enough to justify the world population. Let's just put it that way.
I'm also not excited for Chronicles.
Oh,
I am. I am. I mean, I know I have my reasons, but
You're excited for all of this
Okay.
stuff, Tomer.
I know.
Okay, I'm gonna read.
Okay, hold on. I got a couple more comments to go through.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Siggy Sigwald, new member, gifted 50 RN Raw memberships. Outstanding. Thank
Nice.
you.
Wow.
And then Siggy Sigwald, new member, offers ARS 900.
That's
and
Argentinian
says-
peso.
Is what?
Argentinian peso.
Argentinian pesos. All right. Well, thank you.
Very nice.
Interesting.
And it says, thank you for all the work you do, RN Raw. Thank you very much.
Oh.
And then Deviant Outcast says to Lalandra, happy anniversary memorializing your expulsion from endoplanet uterus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we keep
Get about it.
reading, I just there was something that I noticed. I think I noticed, but 6:1. I think this is where God announces that He's not just going to have Pharaoh like release him. He's going to have him like be run out of the land. He's gonna
Yeah, he
drive
does
him out,
mention
right?
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mighty hand he will send them out, and with the mighty hand he will drive them out of his land.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
that's
he's
what
going to go
yep.
all the way to the other side of. No, you can't go. Get the hell out.
God's plan is to get kind of into this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite literally medieval on them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So biblical.
Yeah, he's going biblical. Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's-
All right, so I'll read from 6:13
missing
to
the
the end of the
jokes.
chapter.
Yeah.
Okay. Or okay, I'll do that. Yeah, because it does kind of flow. So 6:13. God spoke to Moses and Aaron And he commanded them about the children of Israel and about Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to take the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. The following are the heads of their fathers' families. The sons of Reuven, Israel's firstborn, Chanoch, Phalu, Chetzron, and Carmi. These are the families of Reuven. The sons of Shimon, Yemuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yachin, Sochar, and Shaul. The son of the Canaanite woman, which I think previously
we've talked about this, but keep going.
we already said that.
I
that was
somehow
supposed to
think
be-
this would have sounded differently if I'd read it.
You want
I
to
was
read
thinking
it?
the same. Yes, please.
No,
Yes.
we already went over who the Canaanite woman is. So these are the families of Shimon. These are the names of Levi's sons in order of the birth: Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The years of Levi's life were 137 years. The sons of Gershon were Livni and Shimi, according to their families. The sons of Kohath were Amram, Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel. The years of Kohath's life were 133 years. The sons of Merari were Machli and Mushi. These are the families of the Levites in order of their birth. Amram took Yocheved, his aunt, as a wife for himself, and she bore him Aaron and Moses. The years of Amram's life were 137 years. The sons of Yitzhar were Korach, Nepheg, and Zichri. The sons of Uziel were Mishael, Elzaphan, and Sisri. Aaron took Elisheva, the daughter of Aminadav, the sister of Nachshon, as a wife for himself. She bore him Nadav and Avihu, Elazar and Isama. The sons of Korach were Asir, Elkanah, and Aviasaph. These are the families of the Korachites. Elazar, the son of Aaron, took one of the daughters of Putiel for himself as a wife, and she bore him Pinchas, which in English I think is Phineas or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Phineas.
Phineas.
It sounds very
Yeah.
Greek.
Yeah. Pinchas. The above are the heads of the families, the fathers of the Levites according to their families. It was, like the above mentioned, Aaron and Moses, to whom God said, take the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt according to their tribal legions. They are the ones who, these are the ones who spoke to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to take out the children of Israel from Egypt. Both Moses and Aaron did this together. It was on the day when God spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt. God spoke to Moses saying, I am God. Tell over to Pharaoh everything that I speak to you.
Dang, you just powered through that.
Yep.
That
It's
was
I
boring.
will just say some caveats. So
Yeah.
with Isaac's Hebrew, his Hebrew is Ashkenazi Hebrew, and so the Tav sounds like a Samech. So
Yeah,
for
yeah,
example,
yeah.
Obviously.
So what Tomer is saying, Isaac, is that you're the scum of the earth.
no, I just no,
yeah,
no,
so yeah,
because in the
Isamar
English,
is
I would
Isamar would
because
be Itamar, yeah.
yeah, but because the English has them with the modern Hebrew, which is the tough is the tough. So just wanted to point it out.
Yeah.
I have a
Um,
question about what we just
I'm
read
using
here,
an
guys.
Ashkenazi
yes,
English translation.
I have a question about what you just read here. All of
Yes.
this feels like exposition. My question for you
Yes.
is, what's the point of any of this information? For
I
any
have a
part of the
commentary
story?
on this. I have one
Yeah.
for
Okay.
first of all. So Professor Gershon Galil writes there are
No,
several purposes.
You mean prophetor?
Professor.
Yeah, and that reminds me, why do we really need to know who, El Sheba, daughter of Abinadab?
I
Why
want
was
to
that?
say.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah.
interrupting me, please. Okay, so Professor Gershon Galil writes,
Yeah.
there are several purposes for the genealogy presented in verses 13 to 30. The author's main purpose is to emphasize the idea of choice, choosing the Levite tribe from the tribes of Israel, the sons of Aaron from Levi's sons, and the sons of Phinehas from Aaron's sons. The house of Aaron is presented as an integral part of the Levite clan, and at the same time as a separate and special part of it. It is special for being chosen and for its alliance with the house of Judah and the house of David.
Yeah, and
So they're just setting things up then.
they
Yeah.
always do that. Yeah, to move on to the next.
Yeah, this is a later commentary that's trying to
Exposition dump,
say
yeah.
that the reason why this is written here, why not necessarily documentary hypothesis at that time, but when did this guy write? Do you know?
Oh,
the
so
professor?
Are we talking about
No, the actual professor he quoted.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I think it's the like 80s, 90s, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So he would have probably been basing it on the documentary professor. So he's saying that the writers were trying to tie in, why the priestly class comes from Aaron and why they are special, which makes sense.
Yeah, so
Uh,
that
But we
there-
will get to
yeah,
Yeah, a more traditional explanation is just that they wanted to say the lineage of Moses and Aaron here, but because the Levi is not the oldest son, it would be wrong to start talking about him and his children without first talking about his older brother, Levi and Shimon,
Mhm.
Levi and Simeon, and that's why it kind of sounds like the beginning of a proper lineage, but it's just to get to the descendants of the ancestors of
It
Levi.
is always to
Oh.
get to the
Yeah.
next important part. So, as we've noted throughout with the genealogies in the Bible so far, is that they were probably from different sources. Is the thing. So they were probably strewn in later to kind of keep it going. And in fact, one of the notes here is I think there are 3 people who are said to actually live for a certain amount of time. Yeah. So because all the other ones,
I've got it.
no notes on them. So this and it's really interesting. So of course the lifespans, they're about a third of 400, which is like the amount of years that they would have stayed there. Now,
Yeah.
what is really curious to me is why would an author use either so they would have 133 or 137, right? And the thing that I was wondering is if this is a way to kind of divide this into thirds, you can pick closer thirds. So if this is about splitting into thirds, it feels kind of weird.
Well, it might be based on. Well, I mean, I think I did read a little bit about why the ages are brought down here, and one of the things is it's counting. It is to do with counting the years in slavery, but the reason why it's 210, remember we said, and not 400, is because the 400 is counted from the birth of Isaac. So if we, I guess, were to take off the age that Isaac died, and then what that is left over would be divided between these, or whatever.
Yeah, but why would you divide it that way though? Because you could have like 130 like 234s and like 130. No, sorry, you can have like 134 and 136. Like you can have like those other ways of dividing into thirds. So it's just
Yeah.
I'm
Also, I
just,
think Levi is supposed to be so Levi is of the 12 sons. He's the one that died last. He was the oldest one who lived the longest.
sure, yeah.
And when he died was, and then it says Jacob and his brothers died, and then there was a new king. That's kind of when they started working. So that might also be why it brings down how old he is at this. Oh, how old he was when he died. I don't know. I feel like the maths is confusing at this point. Yeah.
The math is very confusing, and you're giving like 3 generations here to go from 70 to at least 600,000 people, which I still maintain, like, just trebuchet birth, just cha-ching, cha-ching.
6 at a time, like
absolutely,
multi-shot.
rapid fire.
My actual guess here might actually have to do more with source criticism. Like I'm kind of thinking of this on the fly, so it's entirely conjecture. But let's say that when they were writing genealogies, aside from this, they were writing genealogies, and they would note the maybe not the real ages, but they would note ages for certain people. And then the later scribe who saw these genealogies, he was like, okay, so this is sectioned off this way because each person who was writing after like a while, so like the cultural memory wasn't forgotten or something like that, and then they took those sources there, and no, maybe that's it, I don't know, like I said, that's
I mean, they
entirely.
might have liked the number 137.
They might
I
have.
think
and
137 is one of the nicest numbers.
also-
Don't know why.
Wait, I think maybe if you add them up, you get 400.
Well,
I think-
if 'cause
yeah.
one of them, because it's let's see, 137, 133, and then there's is there another count of 137 or 133? There's one other one.
Even though that doesn't make sense because
Right, it
you know
wouldn't.
it's not like you die when your eldest son is born.
Right, yeah. So this could have been like the yeah, I'm unsure on this one, but
It, yeah,
either
it's-
way, it doesn't. It's not supposed to fit into an actual story, right? You're just supposed to get to the next part and
they were
legitimize.
totes legit and important, and it's all totally legit and important, etc.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't die when your son is born. You don't die until he he achieves manhood, and it's by right of combat. Then you die.
Mm.
An honorable.
I like
death.
your religion, Rob. I love it. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I think someone in the comments said something like, "Let's not spend too much time on the lineage stuff." So
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
We have
So
comments.
I've got a couple more
Gladly.
comments I got to get to. Vesta Freya says, new member, says when Aaron is in Calgary in early May, there are two iconic places that he should eat at. Smuggler's Inn for prime rib and Peter's Drive-In for hamburger, fries, and milkshakes. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Nice.
Then Ivory Darkness says, looking at this form from a different perspective, I think God just wanted to flex, and Egypt were just innocent targets. Why else would God harden Pharaoh's heart? Well, the more
We'll
important
get
question,
to that. We'll get to that.
yeah, the more important question is that why does God have to talk to one person to tell him to go talk to another person and tell him exactly what to say? God is supposed to be a telepath, is he not? He could speak to everybody everywhere all at once.
Yeah, that's the role. That's the importance of a prophet. And then I mean the way that they cope with it is like, this is just the way that we have to demonstrate faith. And I'm like, that, yeah, cope harder. But the importance of the prophet in the ancient world was huge. I mean, prophet was a job. You were hired to be a prophet. So it was only certain people who could get access to the divine in the ancient worldview. So in this case, the speciality would be that this is God's chosen prophet. It wasn't like this learned craft in opposition to the Egyptians or the Babylonians. Like it was.
Warlock versus sorcerer. Yep.
Yeah. There you go. So.
I'm just saying.
It sounds a little bit like Mel Brooks, as an unemployed
Stand-up philosopher.
Stand-up philosopher. Yes, there we go.
Yes.
In either case,
Oh,
did you
bullshit
bullshit
up.
today?
Did you
Bullshit
bullshit
on
this
this.
week? Did you
All
try to
Um,
bullshit this week?
So then Jet Alone says,
Yes.
look, I am the Lord, and Pharaoh deserved it. Sure, I hardened his heart, but he ran my plagues. He ran on my plagues 10 times. And then
Just give him a giant bucket of KFC. He'll harden his heart in 5 years.
Nopeman03 says, how is time defined in the Bible in the case of Adam and Eve, since there should not actually be any time before the apple of knowledge is eaten? Or how is time measured? I'm equally confused about that, because it was a while back in Genesis when God says that the time of man will be 120 years, and we just saw people living to 133 and 137.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've spoken about this previously, Aaron. Don't make me come back to this source again. I think it's Ibn Ezra who said that the 120 means it's an ultimatum by God, basically. I don't remember exactly. I said this previously, that if by 120 years you will not repent, then I will send the flood. That's how the Jewish commentators interpret this. It doesn't mean man shall live 120 years. It's just an
always
When you're
understood
ultimatum.
it
telling
as-
me it's
I always-
an ultimatum, then God is threatening that if you live too long, I'll kill you.
No, he's saying
No,
that
no,
if the
no.
people don't repent in this time, then he will send this flood. So it's not like a specific person's age is what they're talking about. They're talking about a like in the overall view. In like, I will give you this many years to figure your shit out.
Yes.
The question you
That's
also have to
how they
remember is what
Twenty.
type of calendar were they referring to, because I think I was talking with you about this, Lawrence, about how ancient Sumer, for example, used a completely different system of timekeeping. So I'm wondering if that's probably a holdover from that, and then they took over other ones later on, like the Julian calendar, as time went on. What do you think about that? I know it's big bombs. Sorry, Bal.
Yeah, keep in
But
mind
you know
we
where I'm
need to
coming
read.
from.
You know, I know that they all
This is part of it. This is part of
use
it.
different
Yeah.
calendars. I'm not entirely sure how.
I think it's
the
just
ones in
legendary
ancient
number.
Near East. It probably has more to do with legendary numbers, yeah. But it's
Just
I'm
make people
not
old
sure
in
how
the
it would
ancient
have.
times.
Yeah, I haven't like studied the ancient Near Eastern calendars.
The reason why I'm saying that is that they also spoke about many kings that lived 10,000 years or something like that, and were kingships. Of course, that there was
Oh,
consideration that it
Ancient
was just
Sumer?
family lines. Yeah, in the city of
Oh.
Ur and whatnot. So,
that's-
Yeah.
yeah, so specifically that was what we discovered, is that a lot of these old kings that had said, 10,000 years ago or whatever, this one king was ruling, and there's thought that it could just be the name of that person carried on to the next generation as a house.
The dynasty,
But
the Han dynasty.
exactly,
or whatever.
right.
Yeah.
But there's
I
also,
think you're reading
because they
too much
used-
into that, because in the
I
Sumerian
probably
king
am.
list, you've got three generations basically. No, and when I don't mean literal generations, you divide the Sumerian king list into three sections. The oldest section, they rule. An individual king rules for tens of thousands of years,
Yeah.
and then in the next demarcation increment, whatever you want to call it, the kings there. Again, individual people, and they rule for somewhere between 100 years and 1,000 years. And then in the more recent one, well, now they're only ruling for something that's almost reasonable on the low end, but still gets to be like 170 years or something like that on the other end. So
It seems to
and
be
he
a
ruled from 80 to
compounding.
170 years, something like that.
You know, the Lord of the Rings does that too. Aragorn, it has part
good.
elf ancestry, and he marries an elf, so he lives longer than a normal mortal lifespan.
Yeah.
That's it. Kind of has the
Yeah,
earmarks
yes.
of a tall tale. You know,
It
could
in
be
the
a
past,
trope.
everybody was taller. They lived longer.
It could be a trope that kind of came from the idea of like the calendars changing.
It
You know,
seems
like
to
the
be a
Sumerians lost.
They also had a
compounding.
different counting system where there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2,
Yeah,
3,
yeah,
4,
yeah.
5, 2.
Yeah,
Yes,
That's
they
how we got our
counted on the increments of the finger.
exactly.
Ah.
Yeah.
The
And
knuckle.
that's what was special about their specific counting system, which is why I was wondering, perhaps
Yeah.
that was like a holdover that came over when they actually did their exodus from Babylon. Not sure.
Yes, I think the context in the Bible is more likely that there is a trope of people in old times living longer, and maybe also trying to make direct connection from beginning of time to now.
This is
You only need
this
to
is
put
honestly me just trying
20
to figure this out.
generations because they live long, rather
It
than
seems like a compounding
trying to use
of
logic right now,
something
it's not
that
working.
if they lived a normal amount of time, then it only would
I
have
just
been
I just
like
want to point out that it's I think we should
yeah. Let's
keep on
get
with
the
Bible. I
I just want to
get back
answer
to it.
the question about time. According to the Jewish tradition, the Friday, the fifth day when Adam and Eve are created, that is supposed to be the first day of the year of the first year of the Jewish calendar, which the current year is 5,883, and the 5 days of creation are supposed to be the last days of the year before. Does that make sense? So the first day of creation is like the 25th of December, but not December, obviously. It's the 25th of
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
Okay, good.
yeah.
Just wanted to be
25th of
sure.
whatever the
Loud and
year
lovely,
before
Lilith.
create what's the last month? Elul. So it would have been the 25th day of Elul is the first day
It's
of
something
creation.
I've seen in the Bible and in
And
the worst kinds of Christian theology, this idea that everything is getting worse and worse, going back to, so everything was better and better in the past, going back to the golden
Yeah, it's
age
definitely a
of
trope.
man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a trope, but it's a very human trope. I mean, you know, Ingersoll would point out, you know, everyone longs for the golden age of the past. If you go around, you'll find old men sitting on porches saying that nowadays everyone cheats each other, but 50 years ago, everything was full wool and linen, and everyone gave full weight, and everyone was honest and loved their neighbors. And if you were to go back those 50 years, you'd find another troop of old men sitting, saying that everyone is dishonest these days, but back in my day, they were honest and took care of their neighbors. And
Yeah, the whole
all
Those
the rest
I
of
gotta
it.
were
tell
the
you,
days.
the whole
the
Those
oldest,
were the
Summer of
days.
'69.
Yeah.
the whole
the
Yeah.
oldest
Yeah.
written document that I'm aware of, the oldest written document is exactly that. It's somebody complaining about today's generation not being as good. And it is, and it's the oldest thing. It's like the oldest piece of parchment that anybody's ever been able to find and
Isn't
read.
that in like ancient Egypt or something? And it was someone.
No, it was one of the Sumerian texts. I think the cuneiform text. Is that what
Probably
you're
one
talking
of
about?
the
cuneiform.
cuneiform
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
I
And
do
then you
want
got
to
the
point
guy
out.
complaining about collecting his complaint letters that he received from his customers for his bad quality.
It was that, or like
bronze or
his
whatever.
wife was complaining, you have to come back to give us food or something like that because we're having problems with our chickens.
Yeah, I
or
read
something.
that.
It's
I thought that was
hilarious. I love
charming.
this stuff.
She's
It's so
complaining.
human.
We don't
It's
have
so
any
human.
flour.
Yeah, it's so beautifully human though, and it's a way for us, I think, to really connect with the people who are just like us, but just have a different world connection. It's just, I loved that. I love that so much.
So I got another comment. Deviant Outcast says, a new member says, panel, isn't it interesting that the Pharaoh's name is never mentioned, even though they had 5 of them?
Yeah. So the closest we get is, of course, the city that they're building is named Ramses.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be the closest that we get. So that's why
And there's
a lot
no
of people,
chance of that being itself an interpolation or something along those lines.
no,
There's
not
not no-
interpolated.
No,
No,
the city of Ramses was definitely there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all written far later than any of this
Yeah.
is supposed to have
When it was
happened.
Yes.
So
Yeah, but it's not
It's
interpolation.
possible that when the story is dated, would be before the construction of the city, but when it was written, the city would have been a known city. So
Yeah, absolutely. So I did want to point out on the time thing. So the phenomena is called juvenoia, and Vsauce has a great video on this. So everyone should go watch that Vsauce video when you get a chance.
it was always better in nowadays when I was
Yeah,
young.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like kids these days, kind of thing. Yeah. So
All right. So I didn't actually finish the last chapter because, for some reason, I guess it makes sense. But
isn't that another case of the beginning of the chapter being jotted down a verse for no frickin' reason?
yeah, so the verse 7 begins with God said to Moses, blah blah blah, but the last verse of the previous of 6:30 says it is kind of Moses talking to God, and it's like where do you put the separation? So I guess the people that did the
The
chapter
separation
numbers
makes no
decided
sense here either.
7:1 should be
I
the
have a
next chapter.
commentary here
Probably
by
just
Rashi.
printing.
It says, I
Yeah.
have commentary by Rashi. It says, this is the self-same command which was mentioned before in verse 11, but
Yeah.
because it, i.e. scripture, broke off the narrative in order to record the genealogy, it now reverts to it and begins it anew.
Yeah, it's like
I guess that makes sense.
so it's like so 6:30, which I didn't say before, I guess I'll say it now. Moses says before God, but I have sealed lips, how will Pharaoh possibly listen to me? It's more or less the same as before. So this is kind of just like, okay, we did a diversion, now we're coming back to what I just said, let's continue on from there. And then that's where chapter 7 begins.
Is it
Let's
possible
go,
that
chapter
this was just
7.
because of the printing press, because of how they made columns? It could be that the verse was just so long in how it was
I
done
think the
by
chapter
hand.
verse system is older than.
Is it earlier?
it's older.
Okay.
yeah, it
I
is
think it's
absolutely.
medieval.
I think
I see. Okay.
it's not Nicaea, but
No.
probably around
It's
that
medieval,
time. Like,
right?
It is
Isn't
medieval.
Yeah.
oh, medieval.
Yeah,
Okay, I
medieval.
thought it was like 600-700. Okay, if it's later than that, okay, interesting.
I was just thinking because it could be an early version. Actually, it could even been done like that, handwritten.
Okay,
A
sure.
lot of old books, for example, do have lots of beautiful art forms and things on that to make things larger in different spots. So it's possible that someone just made a mistake and it stuck.
Well, the
Mm.
thing is that became popular in the medieval period.
Yeah, and the people that made the
Like think
chapter
about the
number
think
system,
about think
I'm
about the
trying to
Lindisfarne
think about-
Gospels. The
they had
Yeah, okay.
theological Christian theological reasons for where they put the chapter breaks. So
Okay.
that could explain sometimes why it doesn't match up. With
Sometimes
the,
I
Okay,
feel like
that's-
they're
that's
just trying
fine.
to
The
smooth
story.
out the bumps.
I
yeah.
think that's pretty much what it is too.
Um,
That's why I was thinking about that, because I'm trying to think of the earliest text I know that was like what I was referring to, that was prior to the medieval era, and I honestly can't think of anything right now. But I don't know. It was just
All right.
an idea.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Does Aaron want to join us and read?
Yeah, welcome to the party, Aaron.
That's who.
Okay.
Welcome to your own channel.
All right. And what verse
Wait,
are we on?
Starting chapter 7.
Yeah.
Starting chapter 7. Okay.
Okay.
So
Then the Lord said to Moses,
See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of the country. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply by signs and wonders in Egypt, he will not listen to you. Then I will lay
Christopher
my
Walken.
hand on Egypt, and with mighty acts of judgment, I will bring out my divisions, my people, the Israelites. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring the Israelites out of it.
Oh,
You
God.
should
Is that
read
Christopher
you should read
Walken?
you should read verses. You
So I was
you
thinking,
should read.
and Moses and Aaron said, "I need more cowbell."
You should read. You should
That
read
was
verses 6
brilliant.
and 7 as well, and then I
Yeah.
will start
Okay.
my commentary.
Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh.
Wow.
Okay, so
Gesundheit.
okay, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. So many commentators asked about this, like there's a problem here of free will. So if he's hardening Pharaoh's heart, then why does he basically do this if he just wants to release the Jews? So there are many commentators on this. I've chosen just 3 to skip time. So first, Maimonides, he writes in Mishneh Torah Repentance 6:3, a person may commit a great sin or many sins, causing the judgment rendered before the true judge to be that the retribution administered to this transgressor for these sins, which he willfully and consciously committed, is that his teshuvah, the repentance, will be held back. He will not be allowed the chance to repent from his wickedness, so that he will die and be wiped out because of the sin that he committed. So what Maimonides basically says is there are wicked people whose punishment is the revocation of free will, and they'll be bound to do evil. A person can commit so many sins that basically he cannot be repented.
I just noticed something.
Mm,
So it said earlier that Moses was 80, his brother was 83. Did Moses live 120 years? Because that would mean 40 years in the wilderness. Right. Okay. I get it now.
yeah, and that's why,
Okay.
and then that's the tradition of like Jews say, like, may you live to 120, because that's seen as the absolute limit.
Every section of his life is given 40 years time span because 40 is a magic number. And then here, clearly, they just, Aaron is obviously a bit older than Moses because older brother. So 83?
Yeah, he's supposed to be 3 when he's
12
yeah.
is a magic
Sorry.
number in the Bible too.
Sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean to.
Okay.
it's okay.
Oh, feel
and-
free to pipe in anytime.
Yeah, I got another comment I got to read. Kicker White Lion says, "Great stream, Tomer. You chose a good cast, but why is that Aaron guy here?"
I don't know. He just joined up.
Yeah.
I was reluctant to enter him.
All right, now shall I
Phrasing.
continue?
No, yeah. Sorry, I have my comment. God damn it, chicken! You ruined everything. God damn it. Okay.
My job
Oh
here is
my
done.
god, Tomer, you are really of uncircumcised lips.
Yeah, I am. I am indeed. Okay, I'm moving on. Okay, Rashi, he comments here. Since he has wickedly resisted me, and it is manifest to me that the heathen nations find no spiritual satisfaction in setting their whole heart to return to me penitently, it is better that his heart should be hardened in order that my signs may be multiplied against him, so that you may recognize my divine power. Such indeed is the method of the Holy One, blessed be he. He brings punishment upon the nations so that Israel may hear of it and fear him.
Well, okay. Did either of those explanations for why God hardened the Pharaoh's heart, did any of them explain free will of the Pharaoh to choose to let him go or not?
I think Maimonides says that basically.
Yeah, I think it's like, like he was evil, he deserved to be punished, but because he wasn't going to repent by himself.
God makes it impossible for him to
makes
repent.
hardens his heart, and then he can punish him in this life with something even more strong.
I'm reminded of Christopher Hitchens. What a good Catholic Maimonides would have made.
The interesting thing here that I see is that so there have been a lot of ways that people have tried to translate these words to make it seem like it's not actually like a violation of free will. For example, like he's gonna make his heart heavy, which is like giving you he's gonna be a little more inclined to not to not let your people go, instead of like, he's just not gonna do it. So that is one of the possible translations. So yeah, there's harden, toughen, be heavy, but the thing is, they all kind of accumulate to the same thing: a violation of free will. And the thing is, in this time, that was, like everyone thought, of course, a god could violate your free will. Like they didn't really care that much about free will. They didn't think about free will. So they this wouldn't have
couldn't because they didn't have it.
Right, yeah. So like this wouldn't have been like a theological issue for them, because of course, like gods can do this kind of thing. Gods in every culture around us could do this kind of thing. So it wasn't they didn't think of it that way. But then
look at the point of it in the second apologetic Tomer was talking about, that the point was to harden his heart so he could keep doing these things, these plagues, to strike fear into the heart of Israelites, and I guess Egyptians as well.
I also have a third commentary, but keep going, Lawrence.
But so the point of all of this God is wanting everybody to be afraid of him. Even more afraid, because I'm going to hit you now. I'm going to take away your kids, at the end of it.
If you want to see God as virtuous, then it's a problem. If you want to see him as a petty tyrant king of a barbaric people who wants everyone to bow and grovel before him because otherwise he'll cut off your head, there's no problem. It makes perfect sense.
Kid with an ant farm.
Yeah.
That's a really good analogy.
Now, finally, Sfono, he comments, for if he could not endure the plagues, he would let the Israelites go, not because it was finally humbling himself before the Lord and do his will, but only in order to get relief from the plagues. This was not a good enough reason to grant him relief. Therefore, God reinforced his natural obstinacy. Obstinacy, sorry.
Yes.
So M. Doug offers £5 and says, one point of free will was to allow folks to choose freely. So taking away free will in order to send all the first of Egypt to hell was why exactly?
Well, I don't think it said that they were sent to like anything even resembling hell.
I don't think there was hell at this point.
There wasn't, but they still like, you still have the killing of the firstborn, right? so this is kind of what I was going off of what I was saying before, that they didn't really consider free will. They didn't like have like the concept that hadn't developed yet. Like they knew that they could do stuff, but they also acknowledged that the gods could make them do whatever. Like if you compare it with like the Iliad or something, right?
Yeah.
So gods are kind of like pushing things into certain directions, kind of manipulating people. So this is throughout the entire ancient world. So
You know, in the
Yeah, I think they just
Iliad,
was.
have a
Yeah.
different world, like a different view of free
Yeah.
will, if any at all.
It's
in the
it's your
Iliad,
duty to endure what the heavens bring you.
in the Iliad, the Greek gods make more sense if what you're trying to do is explain why this bad thing happened. Why was there's this Trojan War? Because one goddess was jealous of another, and they had to be the fairest. I mean, their gods are capricious. By definition, the Greek gods are like that, and petty and vengeful. But God is, and even I think in the Old Testament, is not totally depicted as a capricious, uh, arbitrary person with jealousy.
No.
He is, and he's not. But he's also depicted as loving and wanting the best for his people. But no, he also wants you to fear me and bow before me. And
Well-
our God is an awesome God. Look what he
They might have
did.
just
Yeah,
seen it
and
as, you
have
know,
it up.
he was an evil person. He deserves whatever he got. And then
Right,
the
there's that.
question of removing his free will, that's a bad thing. That probably would have been a much later problem.
Exactly, yeah, it was a later issue.
yeah,
The
later issue. And then the answer is like, well, taking away free will is like a punishment, and he only did it because blah 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 blah. Depending on the commentary, like there's one here that says, you know, God hardens Pharaoh's heart 5 times in the last 5 plagues, because I think it says in the last 5 plagues each one God hardened his heart, and that was a punishment for the 5 times that Pharaoh deliberately ignored God's will during the first 5 plagues. And so it's but that definitely would have developed after they were like, removing someone's free will and punishing them for what they did when they didn't choose to do that is wrong. So they
this
had to think
this
of an
is very
explanation.
similar to how God kind of acted with the Babylonians, because so the idea was that from the Israeli perspective is like, we have sinned. This is why this punishment is coming upon us. And then as a way to administer that punishment, God is very clear about it. He sends the Babylonians. In later texts, we will see very clear about it, and then he punishes the Babylonians. So
that comes up here as well.
So even though they were explicitly acting in the Israelite worldview by divine command, even if they didn't know it, God
So that
still punished them.
there's a commentary here that says about the Egyptians, the same idea. Like, if God commanded, said that you're going to go to Egypt and be there, blah blah blah, why are the Egyptians getting punished for fulfilling God's will? And then it's like, well, God said a nation will enslave them. The individual Egyptians being mean or whatever is their own choice.
This
That's that.
chapter
Apologetic.
needed a Satan in it to say, hey, why are you hardening his heart? Where's Satan? Pipe up and ask the hard questions, like he does
That
in other
God
parts.
who needs a
judge.
Satan.
I think he was on holiday that
Ah.
There's words that stand out to me, like how they shall know that I'm God. Just knowing God. It's my idea that
No, go
it's
on.
my.
I'll let Peter finish.
I consider this. So you have Pharaoh, and he's going to go through this process of he's going to know God, and then he's going to turn his back, and he's just going to say, "Ah, that must not have been God." I think that's going to be the case.
I get that point.
Does that make sense? I mean, look at what
wanted
we're
everyone
doing
to know.
now. I mean, I think this concept of we think that we will just worship God once he reveals himself to us, when in yet continually, even most Christians go through these trials and tribulations and turn their back on God, and then are brought back. And then you think it's more than, there's something more to it than just knowing.
Well,
I
there's not
get
even
that he
knowing.
wanted them to believe that he was the God of the Israelites and bow before me and everything. I get that. But then why did if that was so, why did he take away the choice of the Pharaoh why did he harden his heart?
God made Pharaoh's heart heavier or harder or whatever, but it's a combination of Pharaoh also hardening his own heart.
But that's
so,
not what
and
the
then
Bible
God
says.
amplifying it.
No, it does sometimes.
It does both. It does
Yeah, it does
both.
both.
Well, I will give that to you. It does both. Because he wants to, I don't know, so he could put it in a book so we could all study it one day, I guess.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be a good story if God didn't play both sides of the chessboard.
You know
Narrative
that
importance of conflict.
He is God. Yeah.
you know that Egyptians also followed a completely different set of religious rules, right?
Also, torturing innocent people to show off is distinctly not benevolent.
Yeah.
Certainly not benevolent, but I don't think that their view of God would have been like, he is benevolent when you are like, it's supposed to be like a reciprocal
likes you.
relationship. Like you're
Yeah.
supposed to do things for him, and then he does things for you. That is the Old Testament God.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like Pharaoh like denies God's existence at any point. He just sees him as being another god. Like, why should I listen to this god? He's not my
Exactly.
god. He's your god.
Yeah. What do I have to do with the God of slaves?
Yeah.
So
yes.
when I was a
let's
kid,
go.
my mom wanted me to read the Book of Mormon, and I remember telling her that if you want to talk about how things are corrupted, right, and the corruption of man, and the old scriptures are the true scriptures, and the scriptures we don't have anymore, and all we have left is what man is corrupted. And so, well, why would I want to read something that some guy wrote in the 1800s? That's based on a book written a couple of thousand years ago? Wouldn't the book from a couple thousand years ago be the foundation of this one? And then I realized that the Quran has the same thing, that and the Baha'i as well, and so they're all based on this book, and so I should maybe look to the Old Testament as the root of all these. And when I started looking at the Old Testament, I start realizing that that's not the oldest book either. There are whole other religions that have completely different gods that have older books than this. So if I want to get to the common truth or the original truth, I would have to explore Eastern religions at some point. So now I'm reading Hinduism, as a teenager.
There are gods whose names were long forgotten by the time the Bible was written.
Yeah.
For thousands of
Very,
years.
very true. Very
There
true.
is, that's the thing, the point I keep making. There is no original. This is people working out their religious ideas over centuries and patchworking.
There
old
is
things to do
nothing
it.
new under the sun. Ecclesiastes.
And of the writing of many books, there will be no end.
And
an earlier comment about knowing God, right? I've read testimonies from Hindus and Buddhists and a couple of others where they profess to have met their gods, seen their gods, heard their gods' voices, have two-way conversations with their personal gods. And then some Christian will come along and say, well, I have a personal relationship with Jesus. I'm like, do you now? Because let me go take you to meet somebody who has met Bast, the Egyptian goddess, cat with a cat head. Yeah, he met her. So he has proof that she exists because she showed up in his life just same way your Jewish guy did.
Whenever I hear someone say I have a personal relationship with God, I always think of just taking out a crucifix and saying, okay, so where did he touch you?
All right, a couple more comments.
On that note, yeah.
Someone asked a question of me.
Also,
Peter,
God is polyamorous then, but go ahead.
No, that's Mighty Chicken. That's not related.
Yeah, the Mighty Chicken says, someone asked a question of me, Peter, that I would like to address if there is time. Okay, we'll try that. Wander member for 1 month says, for the panel, is there any other myth or ancient story similar to the 10 plagues? Maybe like a borrowed story from other cultures back then, or is this one the original one?
When we'll get to the plagues, I will get to this.
Yeah.
I have comments.
You can't give us a
from
yes or no?
Well, there are for
exactly,
specific
kind of-ish,
plagues.
yeah.
I will get to that.
So there might not be a
Yeah. We
single
believe you,
compilation of
There
10
isn't a
plagues
single,
specifically.
but
Right.
for specific plagues there was.
Yeah.
And I'll
I
get
think
to
there
that.
are other things that mention multiple plagues, but not 10.
Right. Yeah.
And then
10 is a
God's
special.
seed says that's why the first 4 commandments are literally a demand for narcissistic supply.
Daddy wants his fuel.
All right,
And
let's
all
go.
I see out of this, and I can't wait till we get into the commandments because we're going to have so much to talk about when we get to Exodus 20,
Yep.
and just like everything after that, because the way I read the commandments is like it's all about mind control, and that's it. You bow to
Oh, thank
my empty ass assertions that I just made up on the spot, and you will. And you will believe what I tell you to believe because we're all going to make believe in this thing that isn't true.
Do not
And if you
question
don't make
what I
believe in the
say.
thing that isn't true, I'll kill you.
Light
Yeah.
model, anyone?
When I think we'll get to. I think we'll talk about it when we get to the commandments. But now, this chapter.
Yes, let's get into the.
All right, yeah,
plagues.
let's
All right, if you insist.
do Aaron to speak for Moses, and then we get into the staff trick.
Yeah.
that-
Right.
Going off
so-
the staff
So
arrow.
you should read verse 8 to 13.
So am I Moses now?
I mean, I'll continue to be Moses. That's cool.
Okay.
You can
But
be
just
God.
remember,
You're the
Moses has a
Lord.
speech impediment.
Oh God!
I got you.
Don't be harsh.
I'm pulling out my my Brett Keane voice for.
Ooh,
Okay, so who's
ah.
the narrator?
Lilith is the narrator, and the Lord is Aaron. Aaron is the Lord.
Okay.
Aaron is the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
All right. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron.
That's
Lord.
Aaron. That's got
Look-
2 A's.
That,
Aaron.
Right, that's Aaron.
Or
You
Aaron.
have to
Again.
Get
Actually, in
talking,
Hebrew-
the Lord.
in Hebrew, we do
Aharon.
say Aaron.
yeah,
Hebrew, we say Aaron.
Aharon. The
Aharon.
hey is also there.
Mhm.
Aaron.
Most people don't pronounce the hey, I think.
The Lord said to
Aaron.
Moses and Aaron.
No, they do pronounce it.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Who's
Aaron,
the Lord
you're-
again?
it's
Aaron?
Oh,
your
yeah, it's
line,
me
the
speaking.
Lord.
When Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle, then say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake.
So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw down his staff in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then summoned wise men and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same thing by their secret arts. Each one threw down his staff, and it became a snake, but Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart became hard, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said.
Okay,
this is
so
interesting. I don't know if you're going to comment on this specific thing, Tomer, but for the hardening of his heart there, I'm not sure if a different Hebrew word is used, but this one looks
but
like it's
yeah,
like a
it is
passive.
used. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
vayechazak. It means stiffening.
Yeah. So the way that it was used before was in the active sense, where God
this is
hardened
definitely
Pharaoh's
passive.
heart. But this is passive.
Va'akshe.
Yeah.
The word that is used in there is va'akshe.
Oh, it's even a different
Yeah.
source. Okay.
Okay,
When Lilith
so
was reading, I was trying to figure out where have I heard that voice before, and then finally the line came to me. But they were all of them deceived.
I've done that joke like 3 times on this show.
okay. Verse 9 about the snake. So in Hebrew, it's tanin. Verse 15 describes that the staff turned into a nachash, which is snake in Hebrew. While some commentators, like Rashi and Tobiah ben Eliezer, wrote that tanin is nachash, that they're the same creature, the Septuagint translates tanin as dragon, and the Targum Pseudo-Jonathan translates chumana, which according to Jastrow Dictionary is a basilisk.
Oh. And in modern Hebrew, tanin is a
Crocodile.
So is Moses, the Diary of Tom Riddle now, or what's the deal?
Oh, so here's something actually kind of cool about that. So the Tanin is usually a longer threatening reptile, right? As William H.C. Prop observes, and is sometimes used for the Egyptian crocodile or for a mythological dragon. So it's interesting that it's also used for the crocodile there.
Did have some big
I think that's
crocodiles.
modern Hebrew. I'm almost sure
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
invented
like-
for modern Hebrew.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
Tanin.
You see some of the pictures of some of them in Africa. They're like 17 people long or more. Yeah.
Tanin in Hebrew is crocodile. And finally, and the Egyptian magicians. So Targum Pseudo Jonathan adds that they were called Janus and Jambres. In the Talmud, Menachot 85a, they are called Yochana and Mamre. The names Janus and Jambres also appear in 2 Timothy 3:8. Just as Janus and Jambres opposed Moses, so also these teachers oppose the truth. And there's even an apocryphon of Janus and Jambres.
Pretty snake.
Oh. Maybe that's why they get that. Maybe that's why in the movie version there's these two magicians, and they're like they got their
Yeah.
own song and everything. Maybe it's based on that old tradition.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it, and then never heard that there were two named magicians.
Another comment from NopeMan03 says, addressed to the Mighty Chicken, says the illustration of the first letter in handwritten/printed books are sometimes not only for beauty, some are symbols for text/law, like in law books or the Dresdner's Schachenspiegel.
Spiegel.
Schachenspiegel. Yes, I know exactly what he's talking about. So yeah, this is what I was referring to before. You're right about that, but what I'm referring to is that they use those as a form of literary art as well. So while the letter of the law, in that case, almost literally is larger, it does take up more space. And also that specific document, the opposite page usually has a huge amount of illustrations and descriptions to discuss those specific things, and they have illustrations within text talking about it. So what I was getting at was that could be one example as to why all these different types of things in the Bible potentially could have been, cut up in different sections. I might be wrong apparently about that, but that hopefully
And then
answers your
Monty
question.
Python made very, very interesting versions of them so that all the monks blew trumpets out of their ass.
Bless those wonderful, wonderful minstrels.
Ah, yes.
And then Silvio George Pantelimon, new member, says, so God made Moses' staff flaccid and hard, and people had issues with God meddling with free will. And then Trevor and Wright says, why is it that the location of Pithom in the subject of much conjecture and debate among Egyptologists and archaeologists?
Yeah, so we actually, I don't know if that was in the last episode that we covered
We
that.
did.
or
We
the
did
one
talk about
before.
it.
But we did talk about that.
I think chapter 1.
Okay,
yeah.
so in the first episode of the Exodus one. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So I cover it fairly in detail. So if you do want to watch that portion, you should.
Then Larry Fishman offers $6.66 and says, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, for it was 1350 BC and Lipitor had not been invented yet.
Ask your doctor if God is right for you.
Side effects may include arrogance,
Death of
obnoxiousness,
firstborn.
being unable to mind your own business,
See your
And
doctor
death.
in all things,
and
that lasts more than
genocide.
Drowning.
And genocide.
In small text.
Hey,
You see
I
Moses
always
taking a bath on the
tack
beach
that
with
one
his
onto the
girlfriend
end
or
of the
something like
list.
that?
Of,
Oh.
yeah, I always tack that
Tamara?
one.
I have no comments for this part.
So the only thing I want to say is that the Jewish commentaries, they do say that there's a bit of more of a miracle here, which is that in the literal reading it says they cast down their staffs and they became snakes, and then Aaron's staff swallowed their staff. It doesn't say the snake swallowed the snake, it says the staff swallowed the staff.
Yeah.
And they normally learned out that Aaron's staff turned the snake turned back into a staff, and then as a staff swallowed the other snakes. And they're
Yeah,
called staffs because
Totally
they weren't
Yeah.
actually snakes. They were
Brad
staffs that just looked
Charter.
like snakes.
Mhm.
And so
Wonder
like
how
two
much-
miracles in one. So it shows how even though they both did the same trick, he was using godly powers.
Yeah, can we
just
just
being a
focus a
magician.
little bit? This was a trick.
Mm.
This was magic, right? Everybody understands. You had the stick that you
Absolutely.
I
this was a-
disagree.
and everybody knows the magic trick. You have they have the Magi working for the Egyptians. They know that trick. God gives this is the special staff that I bought at the magic store. You turn it like this and it turns into a snake, and then when you
And
swing it like that, it
snake-
goes back into a stick again. Okay, but be careful how you use it because it's sleight of hand. Okay, yeah.
I
No,
think
we're
in
not
the
talking
world
about
of
the
the
ma-
story,
and also the
in the world of the
magicians.
story, the
Well,
world of
And
the
the
story,
magicians
the,
as
the
well
magicians
turn
have
into
real
One at a
magic.
time, guys. One at a time, please.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I get we're not talking about Penn and Teller stage magic. We're talking about Gandalf here, but it's
Yeah.
it's magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Egyptians can do magic, but the way that they're doing magic is with, demonic powers or whatever it is, and they're limited to what they can do. For example, they can't affect something that is smaller than a mustard seed, and they can't do magic when their feet aren't touching the ground or whatever. These are just kind of developed.
Yeah, we'll
later
get
on.
to that.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
And in the
Well,
Prince of Egypt, it does show them just doing magic tricks with tricks, lights and sort of poof, showmanship. Here's a snake, and ooh, red dust
People
into the water.
believe
Look, it's
even
blood.
those magicians were real magicians, and
Yeah,
they're even
yeah.
even Orthodox Jews to this day will they still think of machashefa, which is the word used here for
Witch.
magician. Like they think of I can't remember, there's a word which refers to they believe that some people know how to use demonic powers or whatever to do real magic, and it is against it's against one of the 613 commandments to do it. Or,
Like,
so
like someone
quick,
said in the
P-Town was
comments,
trying to.
Yeah,
P-Town was
yeah,
trying
I
to say
also.
something earlier.
Yes, I would
Sorry,
like to say
Lalandra?
thoughts.
like someone said in the comments, that my snake tattoo is magically turning into a snake.
Nice.
Oh, there you go.
This
Very
is
nice.
Moses. He's
Yeah,
an
P-Town.
James Randy said that magic
Arn,
is fake.
Arn.
and
Aaron,
only fake-
please. Peter
Aaron.
wanted
What?
to speak.
Yeah, I wanted to hear what P-Town has to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, P-Town.
Please go ahead.
Well, I think there's two things I want to mention. One, it's just noteworthy to see that Pharaoh asked for a miracle, and then my second thing I wanted to say regarding the magicians, it's my interpretation that this was real sorcery with the snakes, and why it's
Like
important.
the Egyptian magicians, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
So-
think it was any trick. I think it's important.
That's the story. Yeah.
How
Yeah,
do you
that is
know
the
that
story.
that it's a story? But how do you know that that is not a trick? Because as we were saying just a few seconds ago, Penn and Teller have literally done this trick.
Well, it's
Well,
the
if you
story
look at
itself.
how I think it's the
I
story
understand from that
itself,
story
but
part,
also
we're
the
talking
raw.
about logic here, so that's what I'm asking.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's
P-Town,
this-
when you say magic, I
Let
think you and
P-Town
I are
respond
talking
to
about
Aaron.
different-
Let him
P-Town
speak,
respond.
Aaron, please.
Yes.
Speak up.
Be- it's the idea I get from the story, but also there's a hint too. I think that Isaac mentioned when it comes to how the rods swallowed up the rods. I'm sure other people can interpret it differently, but I think it's hinting to this actually happened, that these became snakes and then they were eaten by the other snake. I guess it's hard to draw the connection, but
So
the whole point, my point is, for Christians anyway, we're supposed to be aware that the unnatural world can have, like, the adversary can do unnatural things. So just because you observe a miracle, we're not supposed to attribute it directly to God.
So how can someone like me, for example, be able to attribute that to a miracle? If you say only Christians are supposed to do that, well, if I'm not a Christian, how can that be shown to me to be an actual miracle and not just a sleight of hand? You see where I'm coming from with this?
With smiting and plagues.
The mighty smiter. Yes. No, I'm honest question though, P-Town. Seriously, how do you rectify that?
Hopefully, I don't know if I followed your question properly. Repeat it.
So you said that Christians are required, if I'm mistaking the quote here, forgive me, that they are required to review upon this as a miracle, as actually having happened. How can someone like me, who is not a believer, able to see this trick being performed and for me to to declare, yes, this was a miracle and not just a sleight of hand trick, which we can show to be exactly the same thing. How
Well,
can we rectify that?
Well, since I'm under the impression, since you're an atheist, that Satan already has, has his influence over you. I don't think he's going to use unnatural things to persuade
I'm sorry,
you anywhere.
what did you say?
But
Said that
Satan,
me
Satan
explain.
has
has
power
influenced
over you, but
Let
he
me-
doesn't
let me-
have
That's
magic.
fucking bullshit, man.
He can only do
I'm
natural
sorry, but that's
things,
actually kind of insulting.
but he
Well,
has
I am
magic
my own
power
person.
over
Thank you
you.
very much.
So
No,
Peter,
there's
when
no
we're talking about
Let me-
magical alien.
Let me
not
a
alien,
moment of
but
clarification before everybody tells me to shut up again.
Sorry, Karen.
Yeah, James Randi said that magic is fake. Only fake magic is real. So when we're talking about stuff in the Bible, we're not really thinking that the mages were doing a Penn and Teller stage illusion for like Las Vegas shows or anything like that. We're thinking about Gandalf. You know, you're actually you have spells that really work. You have incantations and such that really do the thing. Okay, so that's magic. The stick turning into the snake, that's magic. The power that Satan had, if Satan existed, Satan would be made of magic, and so would God. Both be made of magic. The only power that Satan could have over us is magical. When you say sorcery, you mean magic. When you say miracle, you mean magic. That's all of that supernatural stuff, magic.
Yeah. So
what I,
yeah,
if
think
it's
the
okay, if I can
differentiation
can I clarify, because I was trying to bring it home because I don't want to offend Mighty
Okay.
Chicken, because
Bring it
It was a
home.
little
My-
offensive what you said. I have to be honest.
well,
with
I didn't
Because
I
that's-
didn't get to bring it back. What I'm trying to say is the experiencing something unnatural or supernatural has you become aware of the supernatural. What I'm saying is, for you, Mighty Chicken, I don't think you believe in the supernatural, correct?
No, I don't.
What
Because I'm a
correct? That's
person
what
of-
I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay
not.
with the adversary. He doesn't want people to believe that there is a supernatural world.
Again,
Okay.
again, another
When it comes,
assumption.
let
You
me
see
let me
my
just
point.
finish for a second, guys. Okay, so I can bring it home.
Okay.
For Christians, if we need to be aware that just because we experience something supernatural, we can't always just automatically assume it came from God, because the adversary can also use supernatural things.
I would like to
That's what
point
I was
out
saying.
this idea has been one in Christianity for a very long time. But P-Town, I would like you to consider how very, very much it sounds like an excuse for when you are unable to answer our questions or our demands for evidence. Because I demand the same evidence for God that I would demand for anything. The same, I wouldn't buy a used car without evidence. I am certainly not selling my soul without evidence. And yet every occasion where the supernatural is claimed cannot be demonstrated, and the number of demonstrable frauds and falsehoods does not tend to give much confidence. But when I hold religious claims to the same standard that I would hold a used car salesman, I am accused of being under the influence of Satan, as
Yeah.
opposed to being rationally consistent in insisting on evidence. So
I've had that
I
same
want you to
excuse- the same thing has been used on me when I use demonstrable facts, logical reason, and I can prove a point. I'm told that it is only that the Lord of lies is speaking through me. And that's why I can prove that I'm right about what I said, where the believer can never demonstrate fuck all, ever. It's always just empty assertions on your own authority, or because some other authority said so. It's always because I said so, or routes back to because someone said so. It's never something we can show to be true. But if you
I'm
can show to
sorry.
be true, then it's a lie.
Yeah.
I'm
Like-
sorry that I'm interrupting, but I think we should keep going with the Bible.
I wanted to say
Yeah,
one
I
last
don't
thing.
think
if
we're
it's
actually
okay.
all. I think to wrap up, I don't think we were actually really arguing. We're not really in that much in disagreement. We all agree
Right.
that.
Well, I
what
want to
God
clarify. I
does
disagree with
and what
everything
magi-
that everyone
Yeah,
just
I'm
said.
saying that what God does
Right.
and what the magicians
I'm
do
also gonna.
are the same. You're saying, P-Town, and from a Christian or religious perspective, they're both doing real non-natural things. Just one is
Magic.
divine and one is not divine. And as Aaron says, they're both the same thing. They're both magic, which, from an atheist perspective, they both do not exist. So,
Well, and also I
yeah.
wanted to expand on
Okay.
Lilith's point. Like, God's trying to demonstrate himself here to the Pharaoh that he is the God, the most powerful God. But for atheists and non-believers, a lot of us, I mean, there are irrational atheists, but who believe in ghosts, maybe, so they're not being that skeptical, but because there's not evidence. But if someone said, "Hey, have you heard the good news about our Lord Krishna?" But maybe I would believe in God if he killed my firstborn or something like that. That maybe that's happening. I don't know, but I wouldn't worship that kind of God. I mean, that's
Yeah,
me.
It's an incredibly condescending point of view to have against someone like us here, to state that we are all influenced by Satan, therefore we are speaking from a different point of view.
We don't believe in Satan.
It is
Yeah,
Exactly. We
logically,
condescending,
don't
would be the
believe
but
it.
same
it's
It's
when you
also.
incredibly condescending.
I just like
That's
to
why
make one
I'm
point.
upset.
Let's
Sorry,
hash that out
you're
afterwards.
It's
kidding.
Yeah.
very
We
condescending.
need
but
to keep moving
I
with
just want to
the
make
Bible, guys.
one single
This is
point with
Bible.
one sentence.
Don't worry about
It
that.
is also that method of faith, that type of faith, and that method of believing that things that oppose you are, that is the best way to preserve a false belief. If you can think of a better way to believe something false and continue to believe it despite anything, I would like to hear it. But I think that if what you believed was true, it would not require such a perfect method for dishonesty.
Yeah, that's why I've always said that faith is the
To-
most dishonest position it is possible to hold. The only way that you could make faith even more dishonest is by being a professional apologist for that faith.
Oh yeah.
Well, what I
So-
believe is rooted in tremendous amounts of evidence.
Oh,
what I've
uh,
read
that's
in
that's a,
Bible
that's a
no.
whole,
Tremendous
That's
that's
amounts of
bigger
nothing.
conversation, guys.
There is
Let's
no
finish
evidence.
the
conversation.
chapter.
That's another.
This is a different.
favorite-
I agree.
Let's
just
finish the
move
chapter,
on.
and if we have time, we can
Yeah, I
continue.
agree.
Yes, we should get back to the plague
Give
of
me a
blood.
I have
Yes.
I have many comments on this chapter, so
Yeah.
Let's-
So let's
let's
yeah,
if
do
you
that.
want,
So, yeah.
if you want, we can extend it a little bit because
Yeah, we have to
that's
cover.
the blood plague. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to do the blood plague. So let's
All
finish
right.
the chapter. Toma will do his commentary, and then we'll see how much time we have for the other
Okay,
discussion.
let's
Main
get
thing
to the
is,
blood.
in the context of the story, there is powers, and God is showing
Yeah.
to Pharaoh that his power is beyond his magician's power. Okay. So 7:14. Who's reading?
Are we maintaining the Aaron as God and Lawrence as Moses?
Yeah, why not? It's only
Yeah,
if you.
And you're the narrator.
Okay. Then the Lord said to Moses,
Pharaoh's heart is unyielding. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the river. Confront him on the bank of the Nile and take in your hand the staff that was changed into a snake. Then say unto him, the Lord of the God of the Hebrews has sent me to say to you, let my people go, so that they may worship in the wilderness. But until now, you have not listened. This is what the Lord says. By this you will know that I am the Lord, and with this staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water of the Nile, and it will be changed into blood. The fish in the Nile will die, the river will stink, the Egyptians will not be able to drink the water.
and the Lord said to Moses again,
Tell Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the streams and canals, over the ponds and all the reservoirs, and they will turn to blood. Blood will be everywhere in Egypt, even in the vessels of wood and stone.
And Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord had commanded. He raised his staff in the presence of Pharaoh and his officials and struck the water of the Nile, and all the water was changed into blood. And the fish in the Nile died, and the river smelled so bad that the Egyptians could not drink its water. Blood was everywhere in Egypt. But the Egyptian magicians did the same things by their secret arts. And Pharaoh's heart became hard, and he would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said. Instead, he turned and went into his palace, and did not even take this to heart. And all the Egyptians dug along the Nile to get drinking water, because they could not drink the water of the river.
One more verse, maybe.
Yeah,
Mhm.
one verse.
Oh,
25. It's
oh
the
yeah, you're right. 7 days passed after the Lord struck the Nile.
Okay.
Is that where you really want to end the chapter?
No, it
I mean,
makes no
It's
sense.
not the end of the
I
chapter.
will say that actually the chapter here, in the Old Testament at least, verses 1 and 4 in chapter 8 of the Old Testament are verses 26 to 29 in chapter 7 in the Masoretic text. So,
As is tradition.
Ah.
yep. So now my commentary about the blood of the plague of blood. So Nahum Salah comments, it is a fact that for some of the disasters that befell Egypt, there exist parallel stories in ancient Eastern literature. Turning water into blood is a familiar motif. A prophetic Egyptian writing, the Ipuwer Papyrus, which describes several disasters that befell Egypt, mentions a river that is blood, and so men thirst after water. In our story, the Egyptian magicians can repeat the same quote unquote wonder with their spells. Indeed, in an Egyptian folklore story called Stene 2, the magician warns his mother, should you be drinking the water before you will turn the blood should you be drinking, the water before you will turn the color of blood. The sky shall turn the color of blood before your eyes. In a Sumerian story called Inanna and Shu Kaletuda, the goddess Inanna turns the water of a certain area to blood as punishment for a sin committed against her. And as he goes out to the river, so Rashi comments that he went to the river to ease himself. For he claimed to be a god and asserted that because of his divine power, he did not need to ease himself. And therefore, he used to rise early and go to the Nile and there eased himself in secret.
Are you meaning like pee?
Go to toilet.
Go to
Easy?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so he's Kim Jong-un, who just uses all of his energy for working for his people and never goes to the toilet.
Yeah. Ibn Ezra, however, writes that Pharaoh went to see how high the water of the Nile had risen, and Rashman comments that Pharaoh had a morning stroll.
And there was this one day when he couldn't ease himself because he couldn't find the Vaseline.
Yeah.
You
we all
laugh,
know
but
what
there
that's like.
was a fertility rite that involved the Pharaoh and the Nile.
He would have been a lot since it was a 1 amma long.
Yeah.
Now verse 19. Tell Aaron. So Rashi comments here, because the river had protected Moses when he was cast into it, therefore it was not smitten by him, neither at the plague of blood nor at that of frogs, but it was smitten by Aaron. And even in vessels of wood and stone. So in the Hebrew Bible, the word for vessel is not found. It just says in woods and stones. Professor Yitzchak Avishur comments here, the wood and stones seem to represent the foundations of nature as they are mentioned in the Ugaritic myth. Next to, quote, heavens and the land of abyss and stars come the words of a tree and a whisper of stone. I actually couldn't find the source for this, and but
So it's
I'll
like
continue
elemental.
So
I
the
will
closest
continue
I
on
can
to this.
think of, it's going to be of the same point.
Yeah, let me just finish the comment here. It is possible that the text in Exodus is a remnant of an epic that talked about the Exodus from Egypt. Some, like the early translations and traditional commentators, interpreted the text as referring to water drawn in wooden and stone vessels, and others, like Kasuto and Amos Chacham, saw it as a derogatory term for the idols of Egypt.
So as you
They were
noted,
plagued.
Sarna picks a lot of different stories from the ancient world that show water turning into blood, and one of the ones that he mentions is in this translation it's Inanna and the gardener. So the goddess punished men with plagues, the first of which was blood. She filled all the wells of the land with blood, and she saturated all the hedges and the gardens of the land with blood. So the thought here, I think vessel would just be kind of like understood at the time. I don't think it would have been like a. I mean, I think this this story is more propagandistic than it is metaphorical in many cases. But it's the thing that I guess I'm trying to say is that they would have taken this motif, and they would have had an understanding of how all-encompassing this turning of water into blood would be, especially for something like the Nile, where the Nile in Egypt is like the most important thing. Like it sustains them. So it
Yeah.
would be seen as all encompassing. So I think vessel there would just kind of be understood based on previous mythologies.
Well, and also if the foundations of the earth had been, all the water in them had been transferred to blood, then they wouldn't have been able to dig culverts to get fresh water when the Nile River turned to blood.
Yeah.
So that does make
Yeah,
more
the
sense.
tradition is that the digging was in vain anyway because everything turned to blood,
Because it was
and
all blood.
the story is that like they could get fresh water if they bought it from an Israelite. So there were like the tradition is like if two Israelites shared a cup, if an Israelite and an Egyptian shared a cup, the Israelite would be drinking water
Oh,
and the Egyptian would be drinking
I had
blood.
a quote on this.
And yeah, there's a whole bunch of that sort of stuff.
I have a quote on this. So Exodus
Yeah.
Rabbah 9:10 reads, Rabbi Abin the Levite, the son of Rabbi, said, the Israelites became wealthy from the plague of blood. How was that? If an Egyptian and an Israelite were in one house where there was a barrel full of water, and the Egyptian went to fill a pitcher therefrom, he would discover that it contained blood, but the Israelite would drink water from the same barrel. When the Egyptian said to him, give me some water with thy own hand, and he gave it to him, it still became blood. Even if he said to him, let us both drink from one vessel, the Israelite would drink water, but the Egyptian blood. It was only when he had bought it from the Israelite for money that he was able to drink water, and this is how the Israelites became rich.
That's a
Yeah, so
stretch.
there's one way. It's one way of explaining how
That's
they ended up
a
with riches
heck
when
of
they
an
left.
extortion racket.
Yeah,
Kidding.
yeah. So as kids, like when we were, doing coloring in school of the 10 plagues, there was always that one where there's an Israelite and an Egyptian drinking with straws from the same cup. Which,
And you
which was
you
funny.
paint one red and one blue.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how young I was, how good I was at coloring
So
on the
messed
lines,
up.
but yeah. And yeah, it's real, children-friendly stories.
Yeah.
And what's the last
Tasty.
thing? The other
Tasty
thing was,
blood.
of course, that a lot of the plagues have naturalistic explanations, which some might see as being, like, oh, maybe this story is based on true events, but I see more as like, people's imagination are limited by what they observe in nature. So, also these older stories, where did these older people get the idea of water turning to blood? The naturalistic explanation is that there are certain algae that when they bloom will
Red
make the
algae.
water look red.
Yep.
Red algae
That's
blooms,
right.
and
We
also
saw
makes
that
the
in the
water
ocean like 2
very
years
not
ago.
drinkable.
Mhm.
Um,
Not just that,
Don't
but it
drink
also
the
brings
water.
all the plagues and pestilence that come with it too. So there's lots of factors
Mm.
that go with it because it makes more bugs. More bugs. Well, that's why you have locust swarms. That's why you have the frogs.
Yeah, the frogs
All
came
of these
afterwards
things.
because
Yeah.
there was
All
they,
of this
nobody,
can
no,
be easily
the fish weren't
explained
eating
step
their
by step
eggs.
by step by step. Yeah, it's
yeah,
really
it
easy
kills
to
the
see
fish.
this.
It drives the frogs out. The frogs
hmm
still die because they can't get in the water. Then flies
Well,
and gnats
let's do the
spread
next plague and talk about
and they
frogs.
just keep going. It keeps going.
The next
Yeah.
plague
Sure.
is chapter 8, so
Yeah,
take
so
your time.
I got a few more
No.
comments to read, and I also wanted to mention that I mean, my mother, it seemed, when I was a kid, it seemed like she would only believe things if they're not true. She didn't want to know anything that is true. She didn't care about reality at all. Just whatever's not true, she'll believe that. So one of the things that she wanted me to read was Immanuel Velikovsky's account of the 10 plagues and how all of this was supposedly tied to the planet Venus coming out of Jupiter.
What?
Not the
Yeah,
Santorini
that Jupiter
eruption.
gave birth to Venus, and that Venus at this time passed close by the Earth and caused all of these. So ridiculous. But like I said,
She knew
there's-
that Venus is a name, right, for a planet.
yeah. Yeah, so
Okay.
they're thinking about the planet Venus. Yeah, Velikovsky was writing that Venus somehow was that Jupiter gave birth to the planet Venus.
I mean, they
Did it-
did pass each other recently, but,
No, but that's the
in the
story.
sky. Yeah, that's
This
the myth.
Aphrodite is born from well, no, not from
Isn't the
Zeus.
blood of
She's born the
Zeus
blood of
hits the
father.
Yeah.
Kronos.
yeah, it hits the water.
Kronos.
So they've
Yeah.
got the myth wrong as well.
And you don't really
Shock
need
of shocks.
you don't need another planet passing by, because a volcanic eruption actually handles most of this all by itself.
Yeah,
The
the,
idea-
people
Yeah.
people try and say the Santorini eruption explains the plagues and the splitting of the sea and the pillar of fire and smoke.
Yeah,
mean,
but I
it goes in the
still
wrong
agree with you,
direction,
Isaac,
and they
that,
wouldn't
that,
have seen it anyway.
that we're
The
trying to
extent-
find the truth at the basis of it when there really isn't one. This is people
Absolutely, you're
combining
right.
their experiences and tropes of stories that they've already heard, and they just combine it into a new story.
And people's
Right, I'm gonna read a
imaginations
couple
are
of
limited
comments
by
on
what
here.
they see.
M. Doug offers £10 and said, I once did the basic levitation trick in a room full of theists and atheists. The atheists immediately laughed while the theists were stunned until I showed them how it was done. That says it all to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Matt Delahunty tells a story where he did that for a friend who asked him if he had, gotten his powers from Satan, and then he had to explain to him how the trick was done so he wouldn't think he was possessed. But
That's just Satan's lies.
I gotta tell you also that my dad did something similar. I always admired and respected my dad, but the stupidest thing he ever said to me is that I don't care if you're I don't care what religion you are. You got enough sense to wipe your own ass. You can't be no atheist. And what's that based on? He went to a show in Las Vegas and he saw Doug Henning do magic, and he was convinced that it was real.
of course he was. Of course he was. And this is why I love Randy, the amazing Randy and Penn and Teller, because they make a point to be like, we are not trying to deceive you. We do not want you to believe anything when you leave that we do not believe. Like, we're not trying to, make you believe in a literal trick. And they have their, their fake takedown of their own tricks, which isn't actually how they do it and all that stuff. But still, it's fun and it's funny. But P-Town, I do notice you have a show this week with Dr. Josh. I got to interview both of you in the past little while. I got to interview Dr. Josh, and now I'm talking with you here. So what are you guys going to be discussing on Tuesday?
I have no idea. No idea.
You're
I
going to be
figured we'd just
talking
hang out.
to an expert in Assyriology, and you don't know what you're going to talk about?
Yes, we haven't.
Probably a serial.
He's going to be sorely disappointed because I clearly don't have a degree in Assyriology.
I may be
opportunity
mistaken,
to learn.
I
but
have no idea where we're going to go with this.
I may be mistaken,
what
but
you
I
are
think
asking.
the flood's going to be mentioned at some point.
Yeah, I would bet probably. Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
will.
I mean, what
he
else are you
doesn't
going to
know all
talk
the
about?
origin
Cars
stories.
of the 1950s?
Although maybe I'll message Josh about this, but so what I wanted to know, P-Town, might be really helpful. So there has been a lot of scholarship done about the character of Satan, Hashatan, right? Sorry, Tomer, for the
It's
mispronunciation.
Satan.
Yeah,
Satan.
there you go.
Not the Shin is not there.
Don't
Yeah, it's
trigger
Satan.
him now,
Yeah.
Lawrence.
Satan.
There's been a lot of scholarship done about the Satan, and it is essentially a title. It was think of it like a royal court title, but he was part of God's royal court. He was part of his divine court. So his role initially, when you have the conception of Satan, was that he was a divine judge. He would be the one that accuses people. That's why he's the adversary. He's the accuser. He's the
Prosecutor.
prosecution. Yes, and you are the defendant. And
God is the judge.
that is essentially what that character was, and it was part of God's divine plan. He wasn't like this evil doer that we think of now.
No.
He was this character that you have committed these sins, defend yourself. He's the one that is he's the judge. There's been a lot of scholarship done on that. You can read, for example, the works of Mark S. Smith. Mark S. Smith is a devout Catholic, and he has a ton of amazing scholarship on this. His work is really solid. And it's not just him, it's other scholars as well. But he would be one of the first ones I would go to. So when it comes to Satan having power over people, I understand that that is the modern conception of Satan, but that's not how the ancient Israelites would have viewed it. That only would have really come around around the turn of the millennium, because then you get because with the rise of Jewish apocalypticism, a lot of theology changes because of the events of the time, and especially because with Jesus, essentially, you get even more theological progress. It changes even more. So I would start with Marcus Smith, but the idea of Satan as this evildoer in the world that tries to deceive people is misplaced, and I would say it's certainly not Old Testament. You could say it's biblical if you consider Revelation, maybe, but
Yeah,
even
like
then, he's not presented in the same way.
I'm a former Christian, and like I don't view, I would not have viewed Satan as having no power over me because uh, I believed in Jesus. The New Testament says he roams the world like a lion, swallowing people, not just non-believers, everybody. And the world is Satan's world. That's how Christians look at it.
I just want to get a word in. There's another 4 verses for this chapter, but it is really part of the next plague. So do we want to leave that for next?
No, no. I said this previously that in the Old Testament, verses 1 and 4 in chapter 8 are verses 26 and 29 in the Masoretic text. So for them, verse 26 is the beginning of chapter 8.
Oh.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
sorry about the confusion
Why do the
there.
numbering system don't match?
I
up?
don't know.
'Cause the Masoretic
really
text
don't.
doesn't have chapter numbers.
This is just the thing that it's just like a lot of the time scholars will note the verse in like a lot of modern texts, and they would also note, oh, and here's the corresponding verse in the Masoretic. So that happens a lot. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
It's
So
just-
is it because there's
it's a chapter division issue. It's not really that, to me, it's not that big of a deal. It's an interesting part of history, but it's not like a big deal.
So 8:1 in the Masoretic or the Jewish
8:1. No, 8:1 in the Old Testament is 26:7 in the Masoretic.
Yeah, that's what basically it's starting with the plague of frogs, because we've got the stick, we've got the blood, and now we're getting onto the frogs. But it has been over 2 hours at this point. So as much as I
needs to read comments as well.
Yeah,
all
cool.
of you are
That's so weird though, because the Masoretic doesn't have the numbering system, so it must be the Jewish prince themselves that decided that discrepancy.
Who you got out? Oh.
Okay, where are we up to in the comments?
All right, let me read these comments. I have a boa constricting the stool, and I can't unwrap him.
You can't eat that, honey.
Yeah.
But I want.
Wander member for 1 month says, rah. P-Town is so dishonest with his belief. We'll get to that. Let's not make these comments into questions. Ivory Darkness, new member, says, at P-Town, the denial of Satan denies him power. Get thee behind me, Satan. Atheists deny Satan by default, so Satan cannot have power over what we say.
Not in the Christian worldview. So
no.
And then
Really
Silviu George Pantelimon says, new member, P-Town, you should go to Recovering from Religion blog and read some of the stories there and find if the experiences of people going through are caused by the influence of Satan or something else. Then Robert Anthonat, offers $5 and says, RN, you need to talk to P-Town's sensei, Power Word. He's the one who claims to have the evidence. Yeah, but what he will have is another assertion from authority. Never anything that resembles a fact and evidence.
Power Word? Is that part of the office?
Power Word's one of my friends.
May I
Oh,
suggest,
On my-
Aaron,
on my,
that
um,
you
channel.
define evidence for P-Town? Because I know that your definition of evidence is one that I would accept for God or anything else.
Shut up.
Yeah, I just thought it was something to do with Microsoft Office. Like you got Word and PowerPoint. So
Power
PowerPoint. Maybe.
Oh, don't
Power
fight
word,
the
that's so good.
bow and the dog.
And I do want, so everyone has different standards of evidence, and some things that are convincing to us may not be convincing to others. And the
Cool.
so the best way for analyzing evidence that humans have thought of so far is science. That is the best, most objective way we have thought of. It's, and I'm going to say, like, yeah, very obviously, it's not perfect. Logic even has its own issues, right? Because you have like logicians that point out the
Oh,
problem.
I know about logic.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot.
Yeah, it's
So-
not good enough right now. That's-
So
I'm not gonna start.
Yeah.
yeah,
People also
please
have
don't.
different definitions of what
Not today.
evidence is, because people say things like we have the same evidence.
yes, we do.
That doesn't make sense.
It does. It does make sense, and here's why.
The
So we all have
definition.
the same amount, the same. We all have the same set of facts to analyze.
Yes.
That is, so we do
That's-
have the same evidence. Now, how we analyze.
How is it the same evidence if evidence means a body of facts that show one particular way? I don't know what the wording
Evidence
is.
is a
It's-
body
it
of
does-
verifiable
Aaron has a
Interpretation
really
facts.
good
of it.
definition.
No,
It doesn't
a
Interpretation
body
of the
verifiable
facts is where we
facts
have our issue.
that are positively indicative of or direct,
Yes, that's it.
exclusively concordant with
With
one interpretation over any other.
So
If-
it can't be evidence for two opposing things at the same time.
Because you can have
You can have the
evidence
same
that
body
is-
of facts, but it can't be evidence for both.
That
Right,
would
like
be
I said,
Right,
logic.
it's
the
evidence.
problem lies with interpretation because we unfortunately have lots of versions of how we interpreted the facts. And some people use other forms of beliefs
Yeah,
or
I've always
concepts and
hated
things
the
to make
argument
them believe that.
that we both have the same evidence, because no, we don't. We're not even looking at, we're not both looking at the same evidence and interpreting it differently. I'm presenting facts. The believer is not looking at all. They're
No,
clearly
he-
ignoring it.
They put it into a worldview that they already have, just like we put it into a worldview that we already have. Now, I think the main difference is that ours can hold up. Like in the case of evolution, for example, like the evidence is astoundingly high. It's wildly obvious. But if you have a creationist that sees the same facts that we do, right? They can see this. They can see fossils. They can see the same genetic similarities. They can see that same stuff. They put it into a different box than we do. And I think that
maintain that they
ultimately,
can't. I'm very familiar with the thought-stopping techniques I was taught as a creationist. You avoid looking at these things.
Yeah.
It's
So
either
the
an
fact
evidence
that
of one
evolution
point
happens,
or
for
not.
example, is not
Yeah.
evidence of creationism.
you're right. It isn't. It isn't evidence of creationism.
Right,
Uh,
but they will claim it as such. We're both looking at the same facts and coming
Right,
to
exactly.
different conclusions. You're
This-
telling me evolution is not possible. Here is evolution demonstrated. So that means it is possible.
This is where
If a
we go
fact
down.
points at two different views, then it's not evidence for either of them. It's
Right,
not
Exactly.
evidence
The
at all.
same fact cannot be evidence of two different mutually exclusive
It's
conclusions.
You're right.
yeah, it's either evidence for one or it's not evidence for either. It
Facts
can't be evidence for both.
are not subjective.
Facts can
They're-
be tested.
Right, they're
Yeah,
objective.
verifiable, yeah.
Like gravity exists whether I believe in it or not. My personal point of view on gravity, if I'm denying it, makes no difference if I fall down the stairs. You know, it's just that's the way a lot of atheists look at things. Like, you have evidence for God, right? P-Town has evidence for God that he's demonstrated himself in his personal life. I hope I'm not like mischaracterizing that. But other people have evidence for other gods. So how do you demonstrate your God to other people who don't believe in your God? Like, you can't demonstrate it by your own subjective experience. It has to be testable. Like, other people have to be able to come to that conclusion too. it for it to be a fact. Demonstrable.
Well, I use, when it comes to this topic about how can we discern what is knowledge, what is evidence, and how to interpret it, it's why I use the solar eclipse all the time, because it's a fact that these two things in the sky are about the same size from our vantage point. And when they eclipse, we get to see that. This is a fact, right?
Mhm.
It is
Yeah.
my belief that God made that. It is your guys' belief that God did not make that there is no God. And I will have to say
Okay.
that the facts are in my court, the evidence is in my court, and I'll hold fast to that.
Wait.
And this I
So
use this
we
as
have
an
a fact.
example.
Where?
We have a fact, and you
Whether you-
assume a belief. You don't have evidence. You don't have a fact that's indicating one position or eliminating another. You have a fact, and you say, "I don't know, therefore magic."
That's what I heard.
That's it.
Well,
So no evidence.
I think that his principle of charity here. I think that the interpretation is that his would be more readily explainable by his worldview. But I would also say that I think this comes down to Occam's razor, honestly. That it would come down to finding that explanation that explains all the facts, and this is so we like I said, in my view, we do have the same evidence, but then some people don't fully grasp Occam's razor, so they have a different explanation. So they would add on to those facts assumptions that we would argue, for example, are not warranted.
There's two things I want to cover
demonstrable.
really
We
quick
can-
on this definition, because I haven't been able
Sorry.
to since I was wrestling the stupid snake. The first thing, whenever believers bring me evidence of their belief, the first thing that it needs to be a fact, which means we need to be both able to show and accept that this thing is true. And most of the claims they make are not things that are true. And then in the rare instance where you have something that is true, okay, eclipses happen.
And you
Eclipses
can
happen.
demonstrate eclipses to people who don't believe they happen with evidence, and you can
Okay.
test them.
So we know that eclipses happen, and so you make the unsupported assumption that a magic invisible man used an incantation to conjure this shit out of nothing.
And you can't demonstrate
We
that
don't-
there is a God who made that eclipse.
We don't have fact one to imply that a God exists or could do anything. So you just have a fact. We can both explain that fact. I can through science and you can through magic, but that's what it is. You can't
Well,
actually explain yours at all. You just think that you can.
The
I
assumption.
would contend with you, Aaron, that you're the one that believes in
In eclipses.
magic because you believe that happened on accident.
I don't.
You're
believe
the one
anything
that's saying
happened
that
on
it
accident.
happened by
nothing.
nature.
Holy
shit.
shit! Calm down.
And
Wait.
projection is always the first resort for believers, where you want to pretend that faith is based on evidence and that science is based on faith, and you want to juxtapose everything so that only the lies are true and everything else is a lie. Everything has to be turned upside down. No, not believing in magic is not believing in magic. Does that make any sense to you? I mean, if I don't have a rejection of religion, is not a religion. So I get tired of being told that I'm the religious one, or that I believe in the supernatural when I
And
clearly
it's not
don't.
chance, it's nature.
Yeah.
Nature
And so we
functions
know
there
the
was
process
nothing,
the way it exists.
and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. He
Yeah,
made
I
this
also
out
don't
of
believe.
nothing.
And I also
We are
don't
not
believe
saying that.
anything came
You
from
guys are.
nothing. I get tired of that lie too. I think that the universe was probably eternal.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter either, because I don't have a belief about the origin of the universe at all. So I get a little bit tired of being told that I have faith in a belief that I don't even have, because I don't believe that. And not believing in the supernatural, not believing in a God, not believing in any sort of mystical, magical, supernatural thing does not mean that you get to pretend that I'm the one who believes in magic only because I don't accept your magic. No, I'm sorry. You're still the one who believes in magic, not me. You believe that things don't happen unless a God tells them to happen. I know that processes actually work, regardless whether there's a God or not.
I guess let me define what I meant by magic in this case. Magic as in something that's not actually
The
I
supernatural.
meant it as right.
Take your
Thank
time.
you.
Yeah, that's exactly
So when
what he
I
understands and what he's objecting to. You're not being misunderstood. What
Yeah,
we're pointing
earlier
out
you
is
said that
that
magic,
not
recognize-
understanding natural processes, your inability to understand natural processes, or anybody's, and possibly also your unwillingness, is not a defense of the supernatural. It's entirely possible that there are some processes that we just don't understand. That's in fact true. But throughout history, every mystery ever solved has turned out to be not magic. And if you want to lose your faith, I suggest reading the history of apologetics, because every single gap in our knowledge has had God shoved in it at some point, and then we found out the truth, and then someone killed the person who first found out the truth, but we eventually figured it out again, and now I have a computer in my hand. So that's over and over and over again, the same story keeps happening.
We're
Yeah,
talking about
regardless of the
knowledge.
God.
is made.
Wait, we're talking about knowledge here. So how do you know things? Like, how do you get other people to know what you know? You can't do that by your own personal subjective experience. You have to demonstrate to other people that your God exists.
So I think knowledge is a big word there.
Yeah, it is.
There are two more super chats, I think.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
read those.
Thank you, Isaac.
Let's move on.
All right, thank you. Jet Alone, new member, $10. Not only does perpetuating most religions perpetuate the lies those religions tell themselves, it also perpetuates the othering those religions inflict on anyone outside of those religions, which is a very important point, because somehow or other, believing impossible nonsense for no good reason somehow makes you better than the people who don't believe that or believe some other impossible nonsense for no good reason. And then Wander, yes?
No, othering. Oh, no, I was just saying the othering gets worse in fundamentalist forms of Islam and Christianity, where the othering makes people hell fodder.
Yeah, and it
when you
doesn't
reduce
matter
people
if
to
it's
kindling.
Abrahamic religions, because I mean, we've seen Hindus and Sikhs going to
Oh, yeah.
war against each other. Yeah,
Oh,
they
yeah.
both worship the same thing. They just they're calling it God by different names, but it's the
They
same
have
damn
slightly
thing.
different traditions.
And both gods are supposed to be the same God ultimately, because the Hindus will say that the Sikhs are worshiping their God, they just don't know it, and the Sikhs say exactly the same thing about the Hindus. The Christians say the same thing about all of them. The Muslims say the same thing about all of them. But we're going to kill each other over the slightest discrepancy.
The Bhagavad Gita, Sri Ramakrishna says, I am the same to all mankind. Those who worship other gods with true devotion unknowingly worship me.
Exactly.
Syncretism.
Yeah. So reading the Bhagavad Gita was a complete eye opener, because it's older than, I think, Exodus.
Could be. I don't know how old it is.
Maybe.
Yeah, roughly 600 BC.
Cool.
Yeah. So Wander member, 1 month. Wander, it was a member for 1 month, says, so all the Nile turned into blood from North Tanzania to the Mediterranean Sea. I call this one BS. LOL. Well,
I'm almost sure I was taught that this, the whole thing about how like even the vessels had blood in them, that it was completely limited to the borders of like the
Egypt.
Egyptian land.
So it would be
if
flowing from the mountains as water, and it would hit the line, the marker
Yeah.
stone for Egypt, and be blood.
Yeah. And if you took a cup over the border, it would turn to blood. Yeah.
yeah. And we got to get through these, because
Wait, what if you took it back over the border?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Huh.
I can't remember what happened in that
That's
case.
fun. Okay.
And then Adam Mangold, new member, says, we have been telling you for decades that it wasn't an accident, it was undirected natural processes. Yes, well, that's how believers translate accident. It wasn't done on purpose. Everything that wasn't done with a deliberately pre-planned arrangement is an accident in their perspective. Deconverted Man says, please ask P-Town if he has or will learn informal or formal logic, and if not, why not?
Oh, there's this guy. I don't know. Maybe I was drinking or something at the time, but I remember talking to him, and I just remember just not caring for the topic. Anyway, he posted a video on his channel, and he's obsessed about it everywhere I go. It's you don't know anything about informal logic,
I
and
I
I'm just
mean-
like, I just remember. All I remember is just not caring.
I would say
like,
this
But
as
I'll
a
have to go
person,
look at it. Yeah.
as a
Tomac.
I've learned basic logic, that is like Aristotelian logic, predicate logic, and propositional logic. I don't think you really need to learn this. Just the basics of the
Yeah,
basic
informal logic.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was trying
the-
to tell my 15-year-old niece
Aristotelian logic
today.
at least.
I was
Aristotelian
trying to
logic at
tell.
least.
I was trying to tell my 15-year-old niece today about logical fallacies, and trying to explain to her like what ad popularum or argument from
Fallacies is a
popularity
good one
argument
to
is.
learn. You
And
don't need
Yeah.
to
She
learn
just
everything.
he wasn't
but-
interested, like.
Well,
she
sometimes,
just wanted to have fun.
sometimes, like if I'm like 6 beers in, there's like if there's enough like mind power where like I eventually I just can't track it. I'm like, right now is not the right time. I'll have to go look. So let me apologize to Deconverted Man. I'll go watch the video, and then I'll learn about informal logic. Okay, and we'll talk about it sometime.
So you would
right.
not be a Baptist
just wanna-
or
I
a
want-
Mormon having 6 beers.
Jeez. 6 beers in, that's when I get very philosophical. I don't know what your problem is.
I wanted
Well,
to ask.
Well,
Peter,
yeah, but slightly less formal in our life.
I honestly
Oh,
I
very
don't
less formal. Definitely less
I
formal.
wanted to ask you, Peter, a question. I think it might. I think we.
I'll message
it'll
you
get
on your
across
channel,
what-
Deconverted Man. We'll do a one-on-one, okay? Or you can come
I think
to
there might have
mine.
been a bit cross wires. Pitan, would you agree that the fact that an eclipse happens is not evidence for God, but maybe the coincidence that the sun and the moon look the same in the sky, that they can make an eclipse, even though they're vastly different sizes, could be seen as evidence for some sort of intelligent design, let's say? Would you agree to that?
Actually, someone sent me a
Yeah,
meme
I
for
would-
P-Town. P-Town. Someone sent me
So
a
the
meme
accident-
holding up a burger in front of the parking lot next to McDonald's.
Oh, I
The
saw
burger
that.
was exactly as big as the guy's car. Would that mean that McDonald's is supernatural?
Now I want a hamburger.
All right.
Yes, Isaac. You're basically arguing my point for me. It's just at least we can if we can agree that eclipses exist. What you do with that is up to you. I think that it's more probable that an intelligent designer made that.
I
Well,
would
it's
say
not
that
evidence.
there's
probability
a
at
lot
all.
more
Not up
information gathered by scientists that leads them to their conclusion than the mere fact that it exists. They measure the distance to the moon. They have measured it over time, compare old things. They can tell that the moon is very slowly moving further away. And we just so happen to be at a point in time in the history of the world where the moon is sometimes the same size as the sun and not always.
It's not always.
Yeah,
depends.
The eclipses are
mind-
not.
Like in your
Every
picture,
single
right?
time, every
It's an
single time
annular
that you
eclipse.
propose a positive claim, you're going to trigger us badly, because if you make a positive claim, we will expect you to be able to explain it in reasonable detail. So that's why we get always so heated here, is because you say something, then they're like, okay, then show us how. And they say, well, God did it. That's going to piss us off, because that's not
I don't
logical.
have to add God because I can just say, and you guys, again, I try to not say it, but I'm going to say what you believe. You guys believe that happened
No, you're
by
not going to say
coincidence,
what we
and
believe.
I don't.
saying that,
Sorry.
because that
You
is
don't
not
know what we
we
believe,
say.
you're
Listen
not
to what
listening.
we all say, and if someone like myself says that we do not, then we do not. You are putting that into our words and in our mouths.
Your
So keep in mind
concept
that
of what
that's
we
what
believe.
you
I
are doing.
I would just reiterated
us.
what Lilith said. I mean,
I'm aware.
No, you're not. You're not listening. Listen,
No.
a natural process, it does not have to be intentional. Snowflakes are beautiful. They form that way because water is a dipole, and when it freezes, it crystallizes, and they form these beautiful patterns.
It's math.
That's a natural process that
Don't get me
requires
started, Lily.
no intervention
Leonardo.
whatsoever. There are not little fairies chiseling out the snowflakes. My lack of a belief in little fairies chiseling out snowflakes does not mean that I believe that it's an accident with no
Snowflakes are not
explanation.
accidental.
No,
It's a
mathematical.
process.
Exactly. It's a natural
I would
process
We
that
have
functions
different
according to the
controls.
nature of the products there.
Yeah,
We
different
can
definitions
explain
of
that. We can explain
I can-
eclipses. We can explain how a sun is made.
I
Demonstrably.
can. I would
explain how
say.
God did that.
I would say that from chaos theory, we can learn that from very simple rules, we can get very complex stuff.
Systems.
That's it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay,
Stuff, but I say systems as well.
It's half past, so maybe we should do the last
Comment?
super
Been a
chat and wrap it up,
lot
and
of
then we can
ones.
continue.
Okay. So the last one is M-Dog offering £5, says an eclipse can make you blind, so a sign of unintelligent design if designed.
Or don't stare at the sun.
Yeah, I'd also like to throw out that if there was a God and God made everything, there would be, by necessity, it would be impossible to be otherwise. There would be occasionally coincidences. There would be things that would, unintentional results. I planned this, and this, and necessarily because of natural processes, this thing also is going to happen. I didn't necessarily plan for this thing to happen, but this is going to happen because I planned for these other things. So when people say there's no such thing as coincidence, God could not have avoided coincidences. Some things are going to be coincidental regardless, and even God could not stop that from happening.
You know, Larry Fishman in the comments says there was a time a few billion years ago when the moon was briefly in geostationary orbit. It would have stayed relatively still in the same part of the sky for millions of years. Now, I'm taking his word for it until I go and research it, because that's the way I evaluate how I know things. But see how actually observing the moon with science and taking measurements, and you see how it gives us knowledge that how could we possibly know? Now, if you look at the Bible's explanation, what does it tell you? I mean, can it tell you that the moon was once in a geostationary orbit? Can it reveal to you the secrets of the workings of the universe? No.
I
But
think
the Bible
even if-
does, the Bible literally does say that the moon and the
Literally
sun will reveal
doesn't.
knowledge.
It
Yeah,
does.
Just so you know.
But it doesn't, is the point. And
It also
like I
says that
said,
they're more or less the same. That the sun and the moon are both lights, and probably I don't think it says anything really about them being different sizes.
What the Bible
I think there
reveals
is
No, it does say.
knowledge.
It says the
Ah, it
big
does.
light and the small light.
But
So
greater
the Bible
light.
revealed.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
greater
as
light or
well.
lesser light. Yes.
Oh, I actually
Instead
have
of
a really
knowledge,
cool
the
illusion.
Bible
to throw.
revealed that the
Hold on.
people who wrote the Bible didn't have any knowledge.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Or very little.
Knowledge. Like you say that your personal experience reveals God to you. But sure, maybe, but then how can you demonstrate your knowledge of God to other people? How can you show us this God?
And how do you discount all those other people with other gods?
Yeah,
Who,
with their
you know,
personal knowledge.
mutually exclusive
Not
ones,
knowledge.
Hindu gods and so forth.
There's tremendous. I mean, there's a lot of science in the Bible, science that we've only
And it's all
recently,
wrong.
relatively recently discovered, and
Wow.
and I think that that's just a part of the evidence. Yeah.
But there is no evidence. You have a part of zero is still zero. There's no science in the Bible. There's actually discouragement against science in the Bible.
I
You
highly disagree.
You are told to believe not what Buddha is accredited with saying. That you only believe something after you've explored it and studied it, and then it meets your faculties. No, in the Bible, you are told you don't put the Lord your God to the test. You believe what you're told because you were told to believe it, and not for any other reason. And you Thomas, you believed because you saw evidence. But blessed is the one who believes without evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
need a drink.
I find
Guys,
it
I
so
don't
funny
think we're
that
gonna-
like I get, just because I mentioned that one time that you guys believe that happened by coincidence, the whole panel erupts. But
Yeah,
the
because
whole
we
entire
conversation
time
before.
I am told what I believe over and over again. But I do it one tiny bit.
Well,
And
did
it
we get it
explodes.
hear
right?
that
If
shit
you
a
take that
lot.
back, that's actually very nice of you.
Yeah,
We don't.
I
do things
also
happen by accident.
I do agree with P-Town. It did kind of after that. It did kind of sound like an interrogation. I really did not want it to be like that. I like this. The show welcomes disagreements, right?
Yeah.
So I completely understand his point of view there. So, but I also understand like because we've heard it so many times. Like, yeah, it is a lot.
So
Um,
Pito,
I also want to apologize because I lost my temper. That's
Okay.
I don't like to do that. So honestly,
P-Town, if I tell you,
I
Well,
do
what I
apologize to you for that.
Mighty Chicken, we'll cover it after the show.
I'm letting
What
you
I
know now
said,
for
I
the
may have
public
said that
as
wrong. I'm not always the best speaker, so but we'll cover it. I didn't mean it probably the way you heard it. Go ahead, Arn.
Guys,
when you tell me something and I have to interpret what I'm hearing, and I get back to you what you're telling me, what you believe, what the beliefs of other believers have revealed to me. This is what they believe. If it's not what you believe, you're welcome to correct me and say, no, I deviate from all of these other believers you've ever spoken to in this way. Okay, fine. But you and believers just in general love to repeat the lie about atheists believing everything came from nothing, for example, when nobody believes that. I don't know an atheist alive who believes that.
Well, is it logical, plausible, and probable that the whole everything, I don't know, the Pacific Ocean was once in a tiny dot, smaller than a period on the
So
page of
now
the
you're
Bible?
requiring,
Not-
you understand that they're in multiple models
Oh,
of cosmology,
man.
they
That
don't
is-
all have a singularity. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, that there's a
Okay.
singularity. Yeah.
So- And you were
No.
aware that I just said, and other cosmologists, I mean, actual cosmologists will agree, have told me this, that they believe the universe is eternal. There are models with a singularity, and it's an eternal universe then, and there's models without a singularity, and it's eternal then too.
Most
And I don't
physicists
have a
won't.
belief either way because it's irrelevant to me.
We've
So the
talked to
question about
physicists.
whether I think the Pacific Ocean was once inside a dot doesn't matter.
It's not. I
don't
know
believe
it's not your thing. I only brought it up because I was just saying it doesn't matter whether
No.
it's
Most
whether
physicists,
it's
when we talk to
came
them,
from nothing or a tiny thing. It's still
here-
silly to me.
this is the thing. Knowledge is tentative. So, like most physicists, if you ask them, was there a time before the singularity or even before the great expansion of the Big Bang? They're going to say they don't know because they're not going to say they know something that they're not able to demonstrate yet.
Yeah.
But none of them are going to give God credit.
God.
How God describes how the heavens are being stretched out in
Okay, well, of
so many
course, I'm
different
not going
places.
to.
No scientist is going to give the Bible credit when it's right. When there's
The
things
Bible is
that-
not a
You know,
source.
you know what will
Go
impress
ahead.
me? If the Bible actually showed Einstein's equations of general relativity.
Mm.
That's the
That would
thing that
impress
will
me.
impress me.
Yeah.
Just
If
saying
the Bible
stretching
was
the
ever
heavens
right about
is not
something-
impressive for me, at least. That's
Yeah,
not good enough.
If the
If
Bible
you
was
want
ever
to
right
show
about
that the
something, I
Bible
would
is
give it credit for that.
absolutely accurate, you need to show that it is absolutely accurate.
Exactly.
And if the Bible will show me like this complex equation, then I will be impressed.
Yeah. So
Guys,
The
it's
the
been
only
3
way
hours
to
and I need to eat lunch. Okay?
yeah.
All right.
So I love you, but we're not going to finish this argument today.
True.
Yeah.
I
And
completely.
it has gone on like this is the same argument we've heard thousands of times. If you want to see, because I recognize the quote you used, P-Town. It's an old creationist canard that is very well worn.
Yeah, and I
to
have
say
to
the
say
least.
this before we let this go. I'm giving a speech on this in a few weeks in Canada, where I'm talking about how religion really is the father of lies and not the devil. Well, when we tell you that you ask somebody, you ask an unbeliever, how did this happen? They will give you the evident answer, and if there's a probability, they'll say it's probably this or it's evidently that. All right, and they want to be tentative whenever possible. But the believer will pretend to know things he doesn't know because the faith is entirely dishonest throughout. So they will say they know things they don't know.
Or if
And your complaint against scientists is that we are honest, that we won't give God the credit when he doesn't deserve it, that we won't say, God did it.
how stupid would we have to be to say that? And you're complaining that we're not stupid.
Or if we
And
don't
this-
know the answer to something, we'll say we don't know.
Yes.
We won't say God
Well,
did it
Yeah.
unless
I
we
love
knew.
when I interview a believer and they say they don't know. I'm like, yes, honesty, yay!
Yeah,
Because none of us know
Right.
everything.
right.
No.
It's
Humility.
anyway.
The first step towards wisdom is admitting the fact that you don't know anything, and
Yeah.
then growing from there.
I do know some things.
Okay, so
Well,
what did we all
yes, you
learn
do.
today in today's Bible portion?
Okay. We learned that God wanted to demonstrate himself to the Egyptians, right? With
God
this
wanted
plague
to
of
show
blood.
off, and I learned that Jewish kids have 2 sippy straws for the Moses story, and one is red and one is blue, because that's just.
I'll have to
fascinating.
find a picture.
That's
I learned a
believe
stick can be eaten by another stick.
I've seen weirder. I mean, okay, not. I've seen weird
Yeah,
stuff in Christian coloring books too, so I'm not going to be.
I
you know.
remember thinking it was weird that when it came to the plague of the animals, there was like a kangaroo, such a scary animal, like
Wouldn't that be a kangaroo
They are.
in
I've
Egypt?
seen them.
and a
They
giraffe,
smell terrible.
and a
but
giraffe
They taste
with
delicious.
its head poking into the upstairs window, like so scary.
I was
Yeah,
fascinated with
makes sense.
the effort at which people go to try to have a natural explanation of things. I mean, with that book your mom recommended, Aaron,
Cognitive
like
dissonance.
the thought that somebody could actually say, "Oh, here's a natural explanation for this event," is
It
just
wasn't though.
boggles my mind. The Velikovsky, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah,
I mean,
Emmanuel
come on, the guy. There's how on earth can you explain that blood and dead fish could show up in sealed jars? How on earth is he going to explain the death of the firstborn? I mean, it's just the
We
extent
can
that
ignore the things that aren't in
men
the text.
men
Dead
will
fish
go
in
to
sealed
try to provide a
jars, that's
natural
because of the sea, isn't
explanation
it?
You
for something
understand
that
that
is
what
That's
supernatural.
only
Velikovsky
assuming
was
that it all
doing-
happened.
What
which you
Velikovsky was
can't.
doing was apologetics. He was trying to defend the Bible.
He's not a believer, Aaron.
His
Yeah.
goal was to
He wasn't a
justify
believer.
how the Exodus, the 10 plagues, and all of that, how all of that could be really happened. That's what he was trying to do. That's what his book was all about. Apologetics, making up any excuse necessary so that the story of the Exodus isn't just a story, so that it's somehow truth.
God did it, is what the book is saying.
Yeah, and
And
that in
he was
itself
not
is
a
lie,
believer.
and
He went to go.
we embrace that.
So, if I've mentioned this on the show before, so if we read through, for example, the histories of Herodotus, he talks about gods actively doing things and their actual hand in certain events. And he talks about them as if they're real, right? And if we, in history, if we accept that at face value, we have to accept all of it at face value, which means if we just go by what the book these old books say and they're true just because they're true, then or because like we don't have a naturalistic explanation as of yet or something like that, and the reason why history has to be secular is because I don't think you would want to include Hindu gods and goddesses in your worldview. I don't think you want to include Egyptian ones either. And this is where we have to learn to separate how we have to understand how myth was written and how it was understood. So we have to understand writing
Oh, wow.
conventions and storytelling conventions. And we have to understand that in order to maintain a competent and I guess inclusive model of history and the way things happened in the past to our best ability, we need it to remain secular. So while each individual person can accept whatever they feel is right, the fields themselves must remain secular, because then you would wind up with, even in a Christian worldview, if you were to just accept like, oh well, the book says God did it, so God did it, well then under that same rationality, wouldn't you also have to accept that Zeus did these certain things in the histories of Herodotus, or that Krishna did certain things in like the Bhagavad Gita? Like, we can't just take it all at face value. We need to understand the worldviews of the past and then analyze from there. And we can't just take it all at face value. We have to understand where history ends and where myth begins.
Exactly right.
Exactly.
Yep. And on that,
And on that
note,
note-
may I suggest
Perfect note.
that we wrap it up? I'm really hungry,
getting
guys. I'm
hung-
sorry.
Me too, actually.
Yeah.
All right. Good night.
Good night,
Goodbye,
everybody.
everybody.
Right.